Yeah, I got them all
So
digital.
Rick
Yeah.
Brown printed and bound everyone.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
Oh wow.
And he actually tracked down every interactive, so every one
Oh
of the
my gosh.
interactives. He
Wow.
printed all those, all the
Yeah,
mini
I'm not
mods.
sure
that
I
he
have all the
needed.
There's some
interactives.
collectors out there.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's like
You know,
a whole,
I keep telling them
whole
the same
shelf.
thing. That's cool.
Yeah, that was one of my projects when I was on right in the circle before I left in 04 was, hey, you know, we're starting to get a whole lot of material and nobody is really archiving any of this.
Right.
It lives on
Can you hear us over talking?
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
It was like, but we need to do this before we just start losing things, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. That it exists. Because both Greyhawk Online and Cannon Fire have been trying. Best sound ever. Thanks, Kitano. Have been trying to get a hold of a lot of it. So.
Well, it's not getting a hold of it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all technically illegal.
Right, but to
like that.
to
but they're
archive
making
it.
databases
Yeah.
where they're trying to fill in the blurbs,
Yes.
the authors, the level
Yes.
ranges.
Well, if you're doing it for personal use.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I've filled in many a name, right? I've had many people contact me and like, hey, we're missing the name for this year 3 thing from here in France, right? And it's like, all right, I can get you that.
That's cool.
Wow. If you say that during the show, you're gonna get
Bombarded?
bombarded.
An understatement.
Woman named
I've
Rich.
been bombarded on many occasions. And it's like, yes, I get it. Yes, you'll keep it secret. Yes, you won't tell anybody. But
Yeah. More than bombarded, you'll get yeah. It'd be cool though.
Glad y'all can do it.
well, the thing is, if they know the authors, they can just find them, right? Go find the author, and he's more than happy. You know, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to share it with you, and they're allowed to, right? It's theirs, but
Well, then you run into the Wizards of the Coast IP, right? Technically, the authors can't share it without stripping the IP. Britt Fry.
They can't sell it, right?
So
I don't
we
think
already
you
have
can
people
share it.
listening, and Gaetano already said, where do we
Copyright.
email for this? So you're already in trouble.
Oh,
Before the
There you
show
go.
even starts.
Yeah,
Not
Britt
that I'm
is
hard
a
to
good friend of
find.
mine with a law degree,
Yeah.
and he said, no, you know, Wizards of the Coast intellectual property.
What's up,
can't
Asher?
start sharing it.
If we're
up,
can do this.
run away, Greg.
Cats are currently asleep, but that will not happen much longer, and
Yeah.
That's
then
okay.
they will.
We've had our cat
Oh, you
incidents
say
here on the
that,
show.
but I have had till recently 3 very elderly cats, and the 2 oldest passed, and so the youngest one, who's 22,
Oh my gosh.
she has learned that humans communicate with noise, so she screams a lot.
That's okay. If we hear it, we'll know what it is.
Probably
Right,
like
yeah.
at 3 a.m.
yeah, it's not the people locked in Greg's basement. It's
Yeah. No, they're gagged.
I always hit a wrong button. Isn't that? It's always that way, isn't it? So latest sponsor here, we'll pop them up here. Waiting to see some stuff from this. They have a Kickstarter. It's 24 hours left on it. Since we partnered with them, they've added 120 not Patreons, but sign-ups to this Kickstarter. Over 600 now. Some awesome stuff. So sorry for babbling on there, everyone. Paying the bills, you could say.
Right.
I think you should say paying one bill.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe whatever your lowest monthly bill is.
Hey, they give away, our sponsors give away so many great things during streams. Like tomorrow night, Gamescape 3D is giving away fantastic STL files during the game tomorrow night. So, and Infinite Dimensions will be next week's giveaway. And we're playing on Tuesday next week. And I have a real surprise for everyone. I'll say it now, but I'll say it later. Ever since we quote-unquote found Sean K. Reynolds, who was on the show Sunday nights, Crossbows and Crossbones Adventure, I'm going to run it next Tuesday live. So, that'll be cool. We'll do a one-shot on that. So.
Sean was my office mate for many years in Paizo.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had Bruce Cordell and Sean on Sunday night.
Bruce Cordell is one of my favorite people in the entire world.
Last Sunday, yeah. Great. They were both fantastic.
Bruce is awesome.
Yeah, so I could tell you this funny story where I was hanging out with Bruce at Gen Con with a couple of novel writers, and what's his name? Will Wheaton comes over.
Really?
And he's sitting with us in the Omni, and he starts going around and people making introductions, and he gets to Bruce, and Will just loses his shit. He's like, "You're Bruce Cordell? I love your stuff," and blah, 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 blah. And Will is just honestly excited to be Bruce and everything else. Will and I had met before, and they give him a lot of shit, so he's like, "Yeah, I know you." And then when he left, his wife comes and drags him away. And I'm like, "Bruce, that was cool. Will was really excited to meet you." And Bruce goes, "Yeah, he's an actor. I don't think he's genuine." And I'm like, "No, dude, he was losing his shit." For me,
big
you
nerd.
man. Yeah. So.
That's cool.
That's
is
very cool.
Yeah.
My Bruce is, we were at Gen Con, and everybody, this was 10 years ago, 11 years ago. Everybody found out that Sunday that it was actually my birthday the next day. And so Stephen was there. And one thing led to another. Dance clubs and drinking. And next thing you know, it was 3 a.m. in the morning.
That was the year that I won the D&D Open.
That was the year with you Rob wearing a bathrobe from the hotel the entire time. But we ended up sitting in a fountain across from the Indiana Convention Center.
Downtown Indiana, a happening place.
At 3 a.m. in the morning, we're just sitting in a fountain because it was like 85 degrees. And everybody's like, "Why are you sitting in a fountain?" After enough drinks and dancing and shots, sitting in a fountain is kind of what you do.
That was a fun night. I woke up drunk.
Yes.
Woke up intoxicated.
I had my alarm set because I wanted to get out at 8 o'clock to make it home by lunchtime to see my kids. I woke up at 8 and I was like, if I start driving, I would still be, this is illegal. I should not.
That was a very fun night.
I have a feeling it's going to be a very fun stream, just having these kind of stories already. So let's go to the entry screen here. If we come on a minute or two early, no one's going to... see, Gitana, you missed a few shows, and I stepped it up a notch a little bit here. Where do you see this? We have fire effects on the next screen. Even more than this. So, and come into our welcome here tonight, gentlemen.
Over a Greyhawk Wars box set.
Yes! Oh, I got to go with some little thank you.
Recycled from a Dragon magazine.
Yep.
As GSR did for a decade.
Yep. Absolutely. We're gonna get. This is gonna be now. Thank you, Carlos Lacing. Thank you so very much, Carlos. Hopefully, you had a great show on Monday as we were on Gavin.
Hey, Carlos.
I'm trying to step it up a little bit. John at Blue Box is making me feel bad with all his new effects, so I'm trying to keep up with him. And so this is going to be a fun talk tonight, and we're going to try and dig into the behind the scenes in Living Greyhawk. So It's 2 minutes before. Let's come on early. Why not? Babbling. That's it. Jamrock babbling's a good thing. Good thing. Very good thing. Good evening, everyone. How are you? I'm JK, Lord Gazumba. What a crew we have tonight. This is going to be a fantastic discussion. So the regulars are, as usual, Anna Meyer, the fantastic and wonderful Matt Maker, Greyhawk. Yes, we're not worthy. Absolutely, Stephen, we're not worthy. Greyhawk Mike Bridges, one of the best blogs around Greyhawkery. Casey Brown, and you all know him as the guy who signs up for every drawing, even when there's not one. Okay,
because I win.
Yes, because you win. That's true. What we have. Wait a minute. I gotta be first. Boom! There we go. Oh, we got it. We got it.
$5. I'm just shelling out cash.
So yes,
You guys beat me to it.
Casey joins us during every Living Greyhawk discussion, and here are our special guests tonight. Let's welcome back Greg Marks, who we had on a while. I think it's been at least 6 months. You know.
Oh yeah, it was.
Time has flown
in the spring.
Hasn't been that long?
Yeah, I think so. I see what time flies, Mike, when you're having fun here.
I think I have my spreadsheet up.
Yeah, one of our first ones.
At least, yeah.
Oh, Greg, you're on a spreadsheet now.
Episode 35, Jay, if that helps.
Wow.
You can figure out.
Legends of Lore number 35. We're on 75 now, and so it's almost been it's been 40 weeks minimum.
Yeah. Oh,
wow. And our two new special guests tonight, please welcome. We'll start in the lower right-hand corner. Why not, David? You pronounce that Christ or Christ?
It's Chris.
David Christ. David, welcome, and thank you for coming on this evening. I'm really looking forward to the discussion. And also, Stephen Radney McFarland. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, Radney McFarland.
Radney McFarland. Thank you for coming on, Stephen.
My pleasure.
Let's just dig into it right here, right off the bat. So, Living Greyhawk starts, and we've heard about this session 0 now, this year 0 that some people were involved with.
Year -1.
-1 as well.
From the Joff guys.
Yes. So, Stephen and David, whoever wants to start, please, and then Greg as well. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, what you were doing before you were involved with with Greyhawk and maybe even D&D, and then we'll jump into how things came about. So, Stephen, why don't you start us off?
Sure. So I started working at Wizards of the Coast in 2000. I was hired as the editorial assistant for the RPGA, and mostly to work on the magazines Living Greyhawk Journal and Polyhedron. But of course, Greyhawk was so big, a lot of that stuff got thrown on my desk as well. And I think that's technically the is that year 0? Is that year 1?
Year 0, yeah.
Yeah. And I had gotten hired just at that Gen Con where Living Greyhawk was released, and I was going to that Gen Con anyway because I was excited about 3.5. So before that, I worked as a journalist. I also worked as a digital printing expert. I was at various places, and I was involved with the RPGA for a long time. My friends and I started going to, I love conventions, and I talked my gaming group into going to a convention in Colorado where they used to have these team events, and our group would go and win the team event just about every year, and it became a lot of fun. And then Living City hit, and then we all got very involved with Living City. And then after I graduated college, I moved out to the Seattle area during the .com boom, and then actually applied and was almost hired just before they hired Eric Mona.
Okay.
Like I'd been through a whole thing, and then I didn't even know about Living Greyhawk at that point. They were keeping like I knew about 3.5, but I wasn't supposed to, just because I had friends, but I'd moved there just before the 3.5 or the 3rd edition the playtest stuff was going on, and so like I knew I was part of the Seattle Mob, which was kind of the Wizards of the Coast sponsored RPGA area. So there was this secret stuff going on around me that I didn't know, but I was very involved with the RPGA out there and in gaming and whatnot. And then they ended up hiring Eric Mona, and I was like, oh, bummer, but my job was pretty good, so I really didn't mind. And then when Eric and the rest of the RPGA staff figured out, wow, this is a lot of work, they hired me to help out with that work. And then in 2000, this was after Hasbro had bought Wizards of the Coast, there was a major reshuffling. They decided to move the magazines up to periodicals for the RPGA. And so Eric got moved up there. And all of a sudden, I was like the only RPGA guy. And they're like, so here's Living Greyhawk.
Wow.
And I was all like,
Here's
holy
Friday
crap.
Trister.
Here's Friday Trister.
Oh God.
And so I cursed Eric Mona's name for many years. And I like Eric's friend. I still give him shit about it every once in a while. And later on, I worked at Paizo for nearly 10 years under Eric Mona during the Pathfinder first edition. And then I was a senior designer when we were doing Starfinder and Pathfinder second edition. And so, yeah, I worked for the RPGA between 2000 and I think, when did I quit? 2005?
The first time.
The first time?
See, the Gen Con where I cussed your name the whole time. So
Yeah.
I need to go figure out what that Gen Con is.
I think it was either 2005 or 2006. And so I had layers of crazy bosses, and I just got sick of garbage, and I'm like, I quit, I'm out. Like, this was a fun run, but blah, blah, blah. And then about 6 months later, RPG R&D hired me back on, or came calling, and they said, Steven, apply for this position. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Because I was just playing World of Warcraft and selling collectibles and enjoying myself doing that. And then they hired me back on towards the tail end of 3.5 and for 4th edition. And I worked in RPG R&D for 4-5 years. I forget, until I got laid off. Laid off is better than quitting, because you get a nice severance package. And then about a month after I got laid off, then Paizo called me up and said, we have this thing called the Advanced Player's Guide, and we need people to write it. And so are you interested in some work? And I said yes. And then worked as a freelancer for Paizo for 2 books. And then they're like, Steven, would you like to come in to work every day and keep on doing this? And I said yes. And then I worked at Paizo for about 10 years. And then last year, I quit Paizo to do my own thing. I still work as a freelancer for Paizo and many other places. I've got my own game Delve that I continue to work on. And so now I write Pathfinder stuff, Starfinder stuff, D&D stuff, and scrape out a living that way.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
David, how about you with your background story?
My background story.
Uh-oh.
So I started playing D&D in 82, right? As many, so I think that's where, my initial love of Greyhawk came from, right? Because starting earlier, right, you're starting with, the giants and the slave lords and the box set, and the map from the master right up on the wall from the box set.
Yeah.
And, but, for the 80s and 90s, right, for me, it was home games, right? It was home games. It was playing at college. It was playing with friends. As the 90s went on and the RPGA grew, the RPGA presence that was in my area, Northeast Ohio, right? I live in Akron, outside of Akron now. The RPGA presence in my area were a bunch of putzes, right? Just to put it mildly, right? And they would always be like, hey, come play this Living City, right? And we would come watch them play. And it turns out they were all just cheating, and they weren't actually playing the way they were supposed to play. So we would go and watch them play, and we'd be like, all right, this is the stupidest thing ever. Why would I ever want to do this, right? So we didn't get involved, right? The RPGA was there, but to us, it was something silly. But I'm an avid collector. Like, I have a huge collection. There's not many things that are not in my collection somewhere. And so it was getting hard to get polyhedron magazines, right? So I was like, well, the easiest way to get these magazines is if I just join the RPGA and mail them to my house, right? So at Origins 98, right, I went and found them, signed up. and said, please send me magazines. Right. So they were sending magazines, and in one of the magazines it started talking about this living Greyhawk. And I'm like, well, I love Greyhawk. That sounds pretty cool. So I applied to be a triad member with Voluna, right, which was Ohio. And I didn't think I would get it because I never actually even went to a RPGA event ever. Like, I was completely unknown in any fashion. I just said, hey, I have all the Greyhawk stuff. I love Greyhawk. You should let me come play. Right. And it turns out they let me on as the third person. And to this day, I think the only reason they brought me on was because all the other competent people in Ohio, and by competent in the RPGA, that means that when they asked for volunteers, you didn't run away fast enough and hide, right? All the other competent volunteers in Ohio were running Living City already, right? Which Troy Daniels and his crew, they were all running Living City. You know, Claire Hoffman and her crew were already running Living Death, right? So so much of the talent in Ohio was already doing other things that I think I was really the well, nobody else applied. So they brought me on to be the Voluna guy, which was good because, you know, out of our 3 triad members, one of them immediately disappeared.
Yeah, that happened at almost
really?
every
And almost everyone, right? He just vanished, right? I had one meeting with him, and for a year and a half, he never answered an email. I'm not sure if he got hit by a truck or
Oh my gosh.
what happened, right? You know, that was one of them. You know, the other one kind of had this story he wanted to work on, which was awesome, right? But there was all this other thing, like, we don't have a gazetteer, right? It was Voluna. You know, everybody knows where Voluna is, but when you start digging into the information, there's not a lot about Voluna that doesn't revolve around the Flight of Fiends and the Crook, right? There's all that stuff. But then there really isn't anything else about Voluna, other towns, you know, and so, you know, so I just dived into it, not knowing, I had never even played. So I wrote my first RPG adventure without ever actually playing an RPG adventure, right? So, you know, we were just, like a lot of places, we were just kind of figuring it out as we went. You know, so we went to, you know, the first, you know, Living Greyhawk launches in 2000 at Gen Con. As Stephen mentioned, he was hired. And so I actually run into, so that was 2000. So I run into Stephen for the first time at Winter Fantasy 2001. 2001? Yeah, it was 2001.
Yeah, it was 2001.
And, you know, like he had mentioned, he was hired on to be Eric's assistant, right? We were running the Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil, right? We were running the moat house from Monty's new Elemental Evil at the very first one, right? Where everybody was like, dragon? We're too low level. There's not going to be a dragon. Oh, yeah. There's
there's going to be a dragon.
hopefully 20 years later, that's not a spoiler, right? I don't have to say spoiler.
No spoiler. 20-year-old adventure.
2 decades. There's no spoiler. But towards the end of the show, they were running like an LG, like a swap booth, right? It was the first, like, sit down, and if your character has some money, he can get a +1 sword or some full plate armor or stuff like that.
Which no one had money.
Yeah, nobody had money. So there's a whole bunch of expensive certs, and then a whole bunch of people buying potions of healing and scrolls of healing, and right, what we used to call it, the wand of healing, wand of cure, right, the happy stick.
Wand of
right?
cure wounds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have
Right,
to
everybody need the wand of cure light wounds, the most efficient way to heal your characters.
Yeah.
But Steven was running this booth, I think it was Sunday, all by himself, right? And so I just saw him sitting there by himself. There's like this horde of people, right, all wanting their afflictions cured. And so me being the dummy that I am, like, well, this person looks like they need help. I can help. And I sat down next to him and helped him run the booth, right? And so that was how I met, you know, Steven. And, you know, then towards the end of that year is when what I always called phase 1 of the Circle of Six, right? Which was Eric and really that first crew that were put into place before Greyhawk existed. Cisco, Cheryl, there was a few other.
Yeah.
You know, towards the end of that first year, most of them had already phased out. Most of them were gone or were moving on, and there were some positions. So I threw my name in the hat. And, you know, just because, once again, I had not learned yet when they're looking for volunteers to go run away and hide in the closet, you know, so I threw my name in, and Steven probably was like, oh, yeah, it's the dude that helped me out. He's not a dummy. And so I became the first of really what I call the phase 2, right? The cycle 2 of the Living Greyhawk circle was me. So the rest of the original circle leaves, right? So there's like a 3 or 4 month period. I'm the only circle member, right? It's Steven and it's me. And we had asked Jason Bullman to come on board, but they hadn't made the announcement yet, right? So now we're here at Winter Fantasy 2002. We're kicking off the new adventure record, Living Accounting, and we're sitting up there for the Living Greyhawk members meeting, and it's me and Steven. Jason's on the circle, but nobody's announced it yet. So he's just sitting in the back with a pitcher of beer, drinking and pointing and laughing at us as we're sitting up in front of the meeting.
And Eric's heckling me.
The whole time, right? And this was the Winter Fantasy where there was the leftover cakes from the wedding reception. So it was, we thought it was $2 beers, but it was actually $2 pitchers.
Oh my gosh.
And they were those little mini plastic pitchers, right? Like the water pitchers that you'd expect.
48-ounce
reception.
Oh my gosh.
So Jason and I were just walking around with 2 of them the whole show, right? So he was having a blast in the back, making fun of us. But yeah, so, that was the start of the adventure records, right? Then Jason and I revamped the adventure record into what ran for the rest of the campaign. And, I was there through the end of 2004. So I think that would have been the end of year 4. Right. And so, at the end, it was me and Jason, Britt, from over, we had Britt, we had Steve Conforti, I think was still there. We had John and we had somebody from Australia. I'm horrible with names.
And Creighton was on.
But,
yeah.
Yep. And so then 2004 is when I left, which is when I migrated into what I currently do, which is run giant conventions all over the country for Wizards and everybody else.
Beautiful. So. Interesting. Extremely. Yeah. Just
what's wild is because we've heard this from other the old beast, so to speak, the year 0, that either the early admins, the triads, were from Living City, or they were just people who showed up, and each region needed to have 3 triad members. So here you go, buddy. Thank you for applying. You've got the job. And there was a massive amount of year 1 burnout because some of these people were burned out from Living City and hadn't realized it yet. Or some of these people were unprepared for the workload for Living Greyhawk and hadn't realized it yet. And so I myself didn't start playing until like early year 2 or late year 1, and didn't become an admin for a few years later. But we have heard this from the other regions. So it's really interesting. And then Steven, you weren't even. I'm sorry.
No one was prepared for the workload for Living Greyhawk. Like, when I came on and Living Greyhawk was ramping up, there were strange things going on with Living City. There were strange things going on at Wizards. Like, for instance, when I first got at Wizards, it was this 4-quad building that was full, and I walked through rooms, and it seemed like there were people who were just there to play Legends of the 5 Rings or whatever, right? That's all they seemed to do. And I was like, wow, that's kind of a wild job. Like, what is that position? Because I'm full of work. And then later on in that year was one of the big first massive layoffs at Wizards. And all of a sudden those people were gone. And nobody had a real idea. Greyhawk was a grand plan with a whole bunch of people who were very excited about it. And I don't think really sat there and quantized the work. And, and then when it got, there was no balance. And so when it got shoved on my desk, like I had a bunch of competing things going on. I was the new guy. Everybody was like, who the fuck are you? And I'm like, I'm the new guy. And then I get people who were involved with the campaign, the triads who had stuck around, the circle people, very few of the original that stuck around. They all thought they were my boss. And then I was in the organized play department. Those people actually were my boss. And then I had RPG R&D, who those people thought they were my boss. And all of them had all of these competing demands. And I basically had to sit and say, what the hell is this thing? and how can we run it effectively, or at least with the semblance of effectiveness. And that was probably one of the more challenging tasks that I ever got. And I got a lot of shit for it. There's a petition. I've got it somewhere. My girlfriend actually got me this nice frame to put it up to have me fired because of my autocratic style. And I'm like, you guys don't know me very well.
If I sign that, I'm just going to apologize right now because I've.
Oh, that was your
no
one.
idea.
If you didn't involve yourself, there are plenty of people that I consider friends who have signed that. I just kind of giggle on their names, because nobody really knew what was going on. Like this is a period of time where you didn't have really good social media. Everything was message boards.
Yahoo
Everything
groups.
was trickling down in weird kind of ways. Just the ability for us to get messages out were weird. And then there was a bunch of, and because we had a new game system, third edition, which was fundamentally different and had some fundamentally different business ideas than second edition, which of course the brand team and the R&D team were like, Steven, the game needs to do this. And I'm like, okay. And then I had people who were involved in the campaign that we want to do this. And I'm like, okay, how can we make all of these mesh together in a way where everybody's happy? And of course, I got to be the bad guy through all of that. And even with the circle, when I rebuilt the circle, like I was all like, "You guys are the good guys. I am the bad guys. If people complain about shit, tell them it's Steve, right? Because I'm the guy getting the paycheck for this,
Yeah.
right?
Was
And lie if you have to."
Very cool.
Was the campaign Living Greyhawk way more successful than you initially thought or planned for, or what was the?
So it was. Yes. It eventually. So the first thing, our first metrics in year 0 were looking like it was going to be at least as big as Living City, if not bigger. You know, like people were hungry for it. They liked the region structure and everything else. And the region structure was a very good idea that wasn't just thought out very well. And we decentralized to fix it later in the years. So yeah, it was going great guns, but there were some things getting in the way. The first thing was CERT, which sounded like a really good idea, and as a Living City player, I knew all about, but had logistical problems in that you couldn't create the character. Like you had this brand new rule book with all of these classes and everything else, and it was much harder to make a character that you wanted to make because of the trickle down of magic items that certs kind of did. It's all like, oh, I got another +1 sword, but I'm playing a monk, right? Can I change this to a psi or whatever? And it's all like, no, it's a cert. And then the other thing is, at that period of time, the RPGA was something that you paid to become a part of. And that's because it was latched onto the magazines and everything else. And then, of course, the magazines went their own way. And luckily, I worked in the organized play department with DCI, and we were able to make the RPGA free. And you just had to get a card, because we figured out, which the RPGA was always a marketing arm, but we figured out, yeah, this is a marketing arm. This is something for people to gather and play this game that the company makes, and how can we do that better within the structure of Living Greyhawk, and of course in Living Force and the various other things that were going on. The RPGA, when I basically took over the majority of it, had a lot of sort of competing and sometimes slightly illegal goals. And I was the bad guy who wiped out all of those things and tried to put it on a footing where Living Greyhawk could be as successful as everybody wanted it to be. And the way to do that was to make it free, decentralize it, create a different economy for the magic item structures, so people could play the characters that they wanted to play and weren't forced into, with itemization, weren't forced into things like that. And quite frankly, I took it kicking and screaming in that direction, and there was a lot of kicking and screaming.
So much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Inbox.
So much.
Being the only circle guy there for a while when all that was going on, I was a meeting boy.
Steven, you weren't at all associated with Living City, right?
I played Living City,
But you weren't any sort of admin. That was all Ryan Dancy? in DCI. Is that correct?
All right.
Eventually,
Short
yeah.
version, because I know this could be a long topic.
So at the point in time when the massive layoffs and restructuring happened at Wizards of the Coast, there was a plan to sell the entire RPGA to Ryan Dancy. Ryan Dancy wanted to buy the entire thing, just like down the line, Lisa Stevens spun off her own company, and that was where the periodicals went. They became Paizo. So, and Ryan had these great plans. I sat in meetings. He showed me where my desk was going to be. At this point in time, after hearing his plans, and I've got a lot of respect for Ryan, especially with the OGL and the buying and everything else. I just came out and I'm like, you can't, he doesn't have the infrastructure to do this. And I went to my bosses in organized play and I'm like, I have big problems with this because I think you've got some great programs here. They are not going to work well in Ryan. And here are the 7 reasons why. And I just, and I was ready. I was like, well, you know, this gaming thing was kind of interesting. But I think I'm probably going to quit because I'm not going to go work for Ryan because I don't agree with what he's putting together. And the VP of my section actually pulled me in. He goes, Stephen, what if we just sold him Living City? And I went, do that. Let me try to figure this whole thing out on the Living Greyhawk, because he couldn't take Living Forest because that's a whole. There were some things about that. I'm like, do that. Yeah, do that. Because the conversion to 3rd edition for Living City was so mangled, and at one point another boss asked me what I think we should do with Living City, and I said I love Living City. I've played Living City since nearly its beginning, at least in the Colorado area, back before there were certs. I'm like, but put 2 shots in the head and walk away quickly. And they wouldn't do that, but they sold it to Ryan Dancy, which was kind of, you know, a death by slow torture.
Oh wow.
So, yeah,
because they ended up wrapping up Living City at Origins 2004, right? Which is one of the first, big shows I ran, and that was, the big finale. And the funny part is, I kept having, I don't remember who they were, right? Living City admins coming up, needing all of these certs printed, right? Because it was all about the certs. And they were just printing stacks and stacks of certs. And I'm like, if this is the end of the campaign and the last adventure, and nobody can actually do anything after this, why am I killing a whole bunch of trees handing out pieces of paper to people that they're never actually going to use for anything? And they're like, I'm like, whatever. If I can print this and it just makes you go away and you guys are happy, you go, yeah, right. But it was just like, you're ending and going away. Like, shouldn't we hand out suckers or cookies or something?
See, I'm surprised Living City kept going to 2004. By the time I found Living Greyhawk, my circle in Texas, they would talk about Living City, but they had all walked away from it due to the drama or the, +5 weapons for low levels is what I was hearing. I don't know if that was accurate or not, Monty Hall type stuff. And, a lot of us just like Greyhawk from our younger days more than Forgotten Realms. And I didn't realize that Living City had lasted that long. But, I mean, we could have another show where we just ping people about Living City. But this is, Greyhawk. So I'll steer us away from that topic. But that was super pretty awesome dive into it, Stephen. And I really appreciate that. And David.
Yeah.
And I feel like Greg,
Let's get Greg into this.
Silent.
Exactly.
Yes.
Hey, I'm here. I can listen to these stories all day too.
These are great. These are fantastic stories. Yeah. Absolutely. So Greg was on once before. Thank you for coming back. So why don't you discuss your interaction as it ramped up?
Sure. So I guess I played my first D&D when I was 6. So my first D&D experience was the RPGA D&D Open as a 6-year-old. Nice. Yeah, we didn't win. I got involved with mostly like Dave did. Like I started with home groups. I started with, playing with my friends, that sort of thing, till somewhere around the beginning of high school. I think it was 8th grade, actually. A friend said, "Hey, I found this club and they meet and they play D&D every Saturday. We should go." and it turns out they were one of the RPGA accredited clubs. So since I live in southeastern Wisconsin, like gaming is easy to find, right? Obviously, this is where D&D was. People saying they were playing D&D, that wasn't a huge shock. So I got involved with that club, and they hosted their own con, and they went to other cons, and so I got involved in going to conventions. And truthfully, the part about the RPGA I liked the most was, at that time, I really liked the one-offs, the things we called classics, because they would always be super unique, right? It's a really unusual situation, or you got to play kinds of characters you normally couldn't play, like, oh, you all get to be monsters or weird things like that.
Yeah, those are always fun.
Yeah. So I played some city here and there. It never quite caught the bug of it that some folks did. And then when Greyhawk premiered its preview, you guys remember the chance mods, the 3 chance mods at the
Ran them so many times.
yeah, they were at Origins before Greyhawk started, and they're like, here's like kind of a preview of 3.5, and you get a thing, you got like a little cert that said you got some XP for your character when you make your Greyhawk character, blah blah blah. And so I didn't go. I actually had to work, and so I couldn't go to Origins. And some friends came back, and they're like, hey, this Greyhawk thing sounds like it might be pretty cool. Let's go to Gen Con. After all, it's a few blocks away. And, go play this, try this Living Greyhawk thing out. And I'm like, well, I really do like the sound of what I've seen of 3.0. So, and Greyhawk's awesome. Let's go try it. I liked it a lot. I met a lot of people who are names in the industry now. We all kind of started back then. And so I find out our first local con, Chris Tulloch tells me, hey, we're going to have this con. At the time, the Triad members were him, Jason Bowman, and Andrea Polinsky. And Andrea there'd already been turnover, and the campaign hadn't even started. Dan Cunningham had passed away, and Andrea had replaced him. And so they're like, come to this con. And I'm like, oh, money's tight. And they're like, well, if you run enough slots, you get a free badge. And I'm like, okay, what if I run the slot zeros so that I can come with my friends and play with them? So I ran like all the slot zeros for all the people who were like organizing our region. And it was pretty fun. They liked me. I liked them. Everything was pretty good. And they were like, we've got this meta org structure. We need someone to do some stuff with meta orgs. And I'm like, I'm all down for that. I want to write a bunch of stuff for that. And I went and we played at the first con, and I saw what they did. And I'm like, in particular, I witnessed hate for half-orc characters. And because it was sort of the theme, right? We're the elves. But the level of prejudice against them got me thinking, we do have a lot of half-orcs because of IUs in the region. At some point, you can't just, and there weren't good rules about player versus player. And I literally saw groups of elven characters hunting the half-orc characters and executing them. And it was kind of a deal, right? It's kind of a big thing, trying to kill the characters and then people trying to stand up for them. And I thought, I'm going to write an adventure called What's a Half-Orc to Do, that was literally all about this innocent young half-orc who was basically being framed by some folks who were prejudiced, and they were trying to basically pin it on the half-orc because he's a half-orc, so obviously he did it. And the other Triad members I turned it in like a week or two, and they're like, this is a really good mod, and you turned it in super fast, and everything's on time and amazing. No one knows this, but Jason Bowman is leaving to join the circle. So we're not even we're 3-4 months into the campaign. So do you want to be the new Triad member? Because you've done a whole bunch of stuff for our meta orgs in record time. You did that. And I think at that time I was starting to write an interactive as well. So it was yeah, sure. And then I had the same problem Dave did, which is people asked you to do stuff and you forgot to say no.
Yeah.
Exactly. You didn't run and hide in the closet.
And that spiraled into basically working on Greyhawk till its end. Steven saying, hey, you want to do some stuff in these other 3 campaigns that we have? So I wrote the 4 mods at the end, 5 mods, I don't even remember, of Legacy of the Green Regent. I wrote a ton of Mark of Heroes. I ended up being a faction master for Zendrick Expeditions. That became me working on Living Forgotten Realms, and now I'm content manager of D&D Adventures League. So
It's your
Sucker.
thing.
So
Yeah.
you're still not saying no. That's what you're
He's
yeah,
still
but
going.
there's a difference now, because now
You're paid.
we get to sell our mods, and you get royalties and stuff. So while it's
Ooh.
still way tons of work, you actually sort of get paid.
Right.
I mean, you get
Which-
paid like industry paid, but
The Adventures League is really interesting to me because I think I pitched that idea to my bosses in 2002, 2003. And they're like, and they were kind of correct. You didn't have the infrastructure at that point in time.
Right.
It's the same thing that killed Living City is we all live in Seattle, and everybody is like, oh, digital currency and microtransactions and blah, 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 blah. But the infrastructure wasn't there yet. Everybody was trying to push gaming in an area where, unless you were an Amazon or an Apple, like there's just no way you could make it feasible. Now it's a hell of a lot feasible.
Right. That was if Living Greyhawk could have monetized itself for the authors, for the circle, for you, the RPGA, the organization, the RPGA. There would have been some differences, obviously, right? But it was still successful, even though it wasn't
Oh, yeah.
monetized.
I mean, one of the things that I'm very proud of is take year 0 and even sort of the year 1 hullabaloo is starting in year 1, the campaign's active 1 players at least doubled every single year. And it because people were excited about it, right? And people were enjoying what they were doing and everything else. And they used to complain about that terrible SRM, some of which didn't realize I was a person and thought I was some kind of document, and everything else. But yeah, the success of Living Greyhawk, in a lot of ways, was almost in spite of itself for a bit, until we were able to find ways to actually make this huge promise work on, quite frankly, the backs of people like David and Greg and everybody who just put 100% in because they enjoyed doing it. Like, it was such an amazing team effort. But I do not miss the 60 to 80 hours a week.
That's what
there
we've
were-
heard. We've heard
Yeah.
it was so,
Yeah.
Casey saying it was a second job and it was
Well,
constant. And
Oh,
just,
yeah.
So, yeah.
As a circle member towards the end, between the meta regions and the 6 regions that I had, I was responsible if everybody did what they were supposed to, right? And I realized I had some regions like Ekbir in France, right, that didn't produce their full slate that they could have, but I was still editing or looking over like 46 to 54 adventures every year, right? Which is just massive, right? There is no editing, right? It was just, all right, am I going through this adventure? Do I think it's balanced? Is there anything in here that makes my soul scream that this is wrong?
Are there dicks on foreheads?
And no penis
We still
on
use
foreheads,
that.
which we still use that
I'll
terminology.
use that phrase. First thing I check for.
Right.
Yep.
First thing we check for to make sure things are balanced, right? But
Wow.
it was just backbreaking, right? And that was on top of writing cores, writing, Jason and I wrote specials for like 3 or 4 years in a row. All the specials were me and Jason.
Right.
You just didn't realize what that load was until you were done, right? And you shifted it off of yourself and you were like, holy smokes, there's TV shows, right? What is this?
What's this show Lost all about anyway?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was
Wait, there's other things
We heard from
besides
Craig.
just adventures.
Yeah.
Is it Craig
Come on
here
over.
or Craig Hire? And John Jenks, former circle members for Nyrond. And obviously I lived with Britt and whatnot, but they had talked about how they did the exact same thing. They would look in adventure. They didn't edit. They didn't have time to edit. They weren't being paid to edit. And see, at the triad level, I used to get mad at one of our most prolific authors because he just refused to fucking use the template. But people loved his adventures, and it took so much work because he wasn't reading 3.5 very well.
Yeah.
So just cleaning up stat blocks. But we were like, well, everyone really likes these adventures. Yeah, because we spent like 40 friggin' hours, making this thing work. And then we would pitch it to the circle, and then you guys would have to look at it. So it's just layer upon layer of unpaid editing. And the fact that Regions got 8, 9 of these when the bonuses were implemented, the meta regionals,
Even more potentially.
interactives, special missions, things you guys didn't even look at. I think I put in my book, I added up what I estimated our regional content was in the BK, and it's just ludicrous. And then you multiply that by like 30 regions. The regional system was Living Greyhawk's greatest accomplishment, and it was probably also its biggest pain in the ass. Like,
Oh yeah.
looking back on it now, I would, if I had a time machine, I would probably say, do it meta regional.
So and even in year one, right, there was so much of this stuff that they'd ask Eric, there's like, so when are you going to do this? And he'd be all like, oh, on my free time. And then Fright of Trister, like one of the first things that got thrown on my desk was Fright of Trister. And that thing was like, I was like, why would you even promise to do a thing like this? And then one of the most soul crushing things about it is, so Eric goes upstairs, the Fright of Trister stack on his desk, which I don't think was touched for weeks, if not months, was probably about 125 mail-ins. And so if you're not familiar with Fright of Trister, it was a free RPGA adventure. It went out to every single RPGA member.
We just talked about it. In fact,
Yeah.
Monday night on the show. I'm gonna pop it up here. Go ahead.
Couldn't find my copy.
And at the end, it's all like, mail us a story of how your adventure went, and we will send you certs.
Not even a form.
Wow.
Just three
Not even a form.
There you go.
Type your story in.
Type
like
your story
asking-
in, write your story in. There was no
asking
format.
somebody to tell me about your character.
Right.
How many tens of thousands did you get, or thousands, or
So I had 125 of these things. We printed out a bunch of certs. I got some friends in. We worked weekends. We went through these things, and we read some disturbing crap. There's a young girl in that adventure, and there's so many people that were lusting after this 14-year-old girl, and we're just like, what the hell? And we spent like, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 weekends, and that's when Chris Lindsay, like, before I hired him to come in, he was helping me out with that. It was basically my gaming group that came in and helped me out with this stuff. And then and we sent it out. We felt so proud of ourselves. And the next week, 200 more came in. And the next week, 200 more came in. And I don't know what the final count is. I think I've drank those memories away, but it was in the thousands by the time we were done with it. And there were years when people were like, I never got my Fright of Trister. I'm like, we sent out every single thing that we got in. It's all like, if it could have not wound its way through Wizards to that little booth. But yeah, it was so soul crushing. Because sometimes it was just a page. Other times it was 15 pages of really in-depth description. And it's all like,
and people are talking about it in the chat, how they sent that into you.
So
yeah.
I want to, can I
Go ahead.
bring back to one thing that
Sure.
Casey said, just because it popped into my head about the idea of someone who doesn't follow a template. I think you'll note that some of the more prolific authors in both in Greyhawk, but even in more modern organized play, I bet one of the most common reasons they're a prolific author is they follow all the directions. Like, I know
It's really
that's a thing we look for right now. It's definitely a thing we did in Greyhawk. When I had to edit mods, oh, so and so always turns in a clean copy.
Right.
Want to write another one?
Right.
'Cause it's half my work. Then.
I don't know why my predecessors in the BK kept farming out work to Keith. He did great mods. I'm not trying to publicly shame him, but I've said this before. He did great mods, but he never followed the template. And so they kept using him because he was volunteering to write. Maybe other writers just weren't that good, or maybe this was a particular storyline they had in mind. But yeah, so I can understand, especially now that you guys are involved in the freelancing world. I've heard this, you do quick and accurate. And what's the 3 things? I know you guys are going to tell me. I forget. As a freelancer, you've got to do it fast, accurate, and
You're responsive,
something like
Responsive,
that.
I guess. You
It's
have
been
to
a long
answer
time
everything.
since
Yeah.
I've. Sorry.
So, two quick follow-up questions. I think when we were discussing this on Monday night about hidden treasures at Greyhawk, and we brought up Fright at Trister. Now we know why another one never came out, because of what you had to go through. Is that correct? Why?
There was interestingly enough, so the free RPGA adventure was something that had been done in the past. And when Wizards bought TSR and the RPGA, they were really keen on doing it. And I believe, if I remember this correctly, and I think I do, is the next one was supposed to be written by Jason Bowman, and he wrote it and everything else, and we were going to produce that adventure. And then that was about the time when, with the restructuring of Wizards and all of a sudden bosses that I didn't know that I had was all like, okay, Stephen, this is your new budget. This is what you're going to be able to do in a year. It was one of the things that died. And I'm pretty sure that, Jason had written an adventure whose title I forget. And at one point, I was setting up meeting with art directors and everything else to actually get this thing published, and it was one of the first things that was cut. It was definitely not a, hey, write us your story and we'll send you stuff sort of thing. Logistical concerns, at least when I started in the RPGA, everybody was like, yeah, it'll work itself out. And I'm like, that's not the way shit works. That's not the way shit works at all. I mean, it's one of the and that early circle where people, like one guy I didn't even talk to dropped out. Cheryl was a friend of mine from Colorado. A lot of the people who were in the circle, not all of them, but a lot of them were just either losing interest or weren't really doing anything. And one of the things that really impressed me about Dave on all of my meetings is he understood sort of the professionalism behind things, right? And it wasn't something that you found a lot in the RPGA at that time. This was all just fun. It was all just magic, right? And there was a big part of it that absolutely is fun and magic. And we definitely wanted that. But I needed people who understood that this is work. This is when you're at a convention, make the fun, but everything behind it is kind of, it can be grueling and heartbreaking and just a grind of things. And Dave was one of the first people who really impressed on me that he understood that.
It's, running big shows, as a hobby, right? D&D hobbyists, we have a lot of passion for what we do, right? Passion, but also reality, common sense towards what we do are not always mutually shared things, right? You can have a lot of passion. Like, we all know people who've opened a game store, right? Who have a passion for gaming and Dungeons and Dragons, and they fail miserably, right? Because that passion isn't rooted in reality, right? There isn't a game plan. There isn't right? I'm just going to open a store and everybody loves things as much as I do, and they're just going to throw money at us, right? And that was, kind of the same thing with, with Living Greyhawk. It was backbreaking work, right? The magic happened, especially in those days where we didn't have a lot of the tools that we have today. It was just done by backbreaking, get shit done, right? And there's no complaining, right? And that's the only reason Greyhawk survived, is we managed to find enough people that were willing to just do that, right? Just nose to the grindstone. I don't know how many times it was a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm sure you guys are the same, where there's a convention this weekend and I don't have all the adventures and the adventure records done, right? And you were sitting there at 2, 3 in the morning, just doing it, right? It sucked. There was things you'd rather be doing, but you just had to do it.
Yep.
And that's
You'd be
how
in the con suite on a friggin' Saturday morning before Saturday Night Interactive, putting the finishing touches on it. Your slot 0 of it was a very loosey-goosey play test, so your judges got to at least play something, before they went and slot 0'd it as well. I mean, there was a lot of seat of the pants getting shit done.
But I still think the really successful regions, and I know you guys have talked to a bunch of those folks, were the ones that had a plan, like that started each year with, okay, these are the cons that we're going to support, that we're going to go to. These are all of the deadlines for editing, for et cetera, for adventures. Not that you would always hit every single one, because life is reality.
Yeah.
But still, that was the difference I saw between the triads who consistently had a successful story, was they had a plan, versus, well, where's this going to go? We're going to just wing something next time, and sure, it'll be great.
Well, I mean, just take a look at High Folk, right? High Folk, from the beginning, was one of the most put together regions, if not the most put together region. And so, and take a look at the folks who grew out of that, right? Jason Bullman became a Circle member. He later went on to be the editor of Dragon Magazine, and then designed Pathfinder First Edition and everything else. Chris Tulloch took over my position when I left Organized Play in Wizards of the Coast, and he still works for Wizards of the Coast.
He's back in that job too.
Oh, good.
In a variation of that job.
In a variation of that job. Yeah, I know it's.
Tell Chris to get his butt on this show.
And then what Greg is doing right now. Oh, good luck. So there are many things, like I had many fights when I worked at Wizards of the Organized Play thing. And so, and it's kind of fun. Like I'm friends with Frank Menser. And Frank has always been really great to me. And he's one of the earlier people to start, with the RPGA and whatnot. And he posted this whole thing about what the RPGA was supposed to be. And I realized I dismantled just about everything that he put together, but for some very good reasons that most people don't understand. They're very valid business reasons. Like, once upon a time, the RPGA was supposed to be every game. And so they were publishing systems that they didn't own. And they were all like, oh, nobody cares. And I was like, we can't, I came from a publishing background, and I'm like, this is going to bite us in the ass. There were many things that I warned my bosses at Wizards of the Coast that were going to eventually bite us in the ass, like being a publicly held company that had a volunteer network, which, Wizards got dinged with, and Paizo had to restructure and everything else, because it's all like, fandom is great, but once fandom hits business, things get weird.
Yeah.
And so everybody had to kind of react to that. They constantly wanted to kill the name RPGA. Every year I'd have a meeting that's like, well, Stephen, we don't want to have a winter fantasy because it sounds like a porn show. I'm like, I've never been to a porn show, but what? Like, it's
So they
it's a
changed it to EDXP.
yeah. So we had to change that to D&D experience, because people who were above me in the food chain kept on like, it sounds like a porn show. I'm like, well, it's not a porn show, far from it. And let's get rid of the RPGA, and you guys can just become part of the DCI. And I fought that the entire way. But it's a thing like, Adventurers League now, even though it does things, I think, much smarter than the RPGA did. And then what the fans see on the ground and what they expect things to be. I was always the guy in the middle, fighting on one end for this and fighting on the other end for this, and just trying to push this thing along where everybody was as happy as they could be with that situation. And it taught me a lot. I cried a lot. I probably started drinking heavily at that time.
You had thousands of people, idiot players. I'm gonna put myself in this group. We were idiot players on the Yahoo group, pissing and moaning about, we don't like this campaign rule, or why do we only have 52 time units, and what the fuck is a time unit, and why are there 52 of them? Why can't I just play my character as much as I want to?
Right.
Why do we have to follow sage advice for the FAQ, where I will die on that hill? Skip Williams was a recent guest. That's all I'm going to say. I know you're good friends with him, Stephen. I just didn't ever like the sage advice in Living Greyhawk.
Oh, I used to argue.
You don't use it.
Time.
Right.
You don't use it anymore.
Oh, I never read it. That's what I would tell tables. I didn't read that.
Yeah.
Next ruling. But anyway, my point is, so you had thousands of idiot players who were pissing and moaning and sending vitriol your way. And I apologize. I'm sure I was one of those idiots, because I didn't know any better. I didn't have a broad understanding of what it really took until I became a Triad member. And then I was like, holy shit, this is unpaid volunteer labor of love work. So let me first of all thank you gentlemen for this labor of love work, because I don't think we've said that yet on this show. And me, I got out of the Army in like 2000. I was working at a bookstore in College Station, Texas. I had some people come in and buy a Living Greyhawk Gazetteer. So Gary, if you're in the audience, me being in Living Greyhawk is your fault, but you already know that. And I asked them,
He's in
"Hey,
the audience.
what is this? I like Greyhawk." And they said, "Oh, there's this new campaign." Well, not new. It was like 2001 or two, called Living Greyhawk, and you can play the same character anywhere. And I thought immediately back to high school and college. Why did campaigns end? Dungeon masters left, quit, got married, got jobs, went to college or whatever.
They don't.
And so that was immediately a brilliant idea. And I'm not sure we've touched on that with this audience yet tonight. The reason why Living Greyhawk worked is because you could travel and you could play the same character and you could meet new people and you could play with different characters with your character. And it just worked. It was a brilliant concept.
Yeah, it was
And
an
then-
MMORPG before there really was any.
I mean,
You
and it
had
was
a
the first
reason.
mass,
That's a good point, Stephen.
campaign.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
right?
You had a reason to travel, right?
You had a
LG
reason to
built-in
travel because of the
reason to
regional
travel.
system.
Go meet new people.
Mhm.
Go meet new friends. Have fun.
Right. Absolutely. And then I liked it. I enjoyed it. I got my character a couple levels and I was like, well, I used to run Greyhawk. I wonder what can I learn about the Bandit Kingdoms? Well, oh, this is really neat. The Fell Reef Forest. And I just kind of volunteered to the triad who did meta region stuff at the time, Mike Garris, like, what do you need help with? Like, can I help with a meta org or an intro mod or whatever? And he was like, sure, knock yourself out. The Fell Reef Elves, because one of my characters was a Fell Reef Elf, do this, do that. So in year 3, I did this and I did that. And the next thing I know, in year 4, I'm doing special missions. And then in year 5, I'm a triad member. And the entire campaign was all the people who were so passionate they were willing to do this unpaid, and yet they still had we had people coming up to us at cons pissing and moaning, and we're like, dude, we're not even getting paid to do this. So you probably got that 100 times more, Dave, and you got that 1,000, Stephen.
Here's one of my favorite stories. So I end up going, I think this is the end of year 1 or the beginning of year 2. And so I started in the RPGA in the Colorado area with Genghis Khan and Tacticon and Ben Con back when it was in. That's where I played my first RPGA and everything else. I end up going to the bar. It ends up the bartender is a guy that I used to work with in a sub sandwich shop before I went to college. Right? His name was Steve. And so I'm like, I know you. And he goes, we work together. I'm like, that's right. And so we're just hanging out and shooting the shit. I'm wearing an RPGA shirt, and these guys come up to the bar, and they're like, "Are you Stephen Radney McFarland?" And I go, "Yeah, I am." And he goes, "Well, there are some people downstairs who want to beat the shit out of me." And I said, so I go, "Really?"
Wow.
And they go, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, tell them I'm at the bar."
Wow.
And these guys just look at me and they're like, "You're a big guy." And I'm like, And he goes, "But some of these guys were in the military." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't give a shit. Tell them I'm at the bar." And they go and they leave. And Steve just looks at me and he goes, "What the fuck do you do now? Like, why are people coming up to you in my bar starting to fight?" He goes, "Don't fight in my bar." And I'm like, yeah, "Don't worry about it. Nobody's going to come up." Yeah, the vitriol and everything else, my friends used to laugh at it because online I have 2 main rules. I'm like, don't treat anybody differently than you would treat them in person, which has served me well for a long time. But you also have to realize sometimes how I treat people in person. I can be very biting and sarcastic and whatnot. And then the other thing is, don't read the comments. So, and so my friends are like, "You should see what they're saying about you online." I'm like, I don't care. Like, I've got a job to do, it needs to get done, everything else, no matter who would be in this position. I'm actually fighting so, they can have what they want. They may not realize it, but they're not seeing the pictures the way I see it, or the pictures the way that their triads are seeing it, or the circle members are seeing it, and everything else. And so when I went on and taught game design classes, in the local area. I would tell my students, you were going to get beat up online. And I said, just realize the same people who are sitting there and complaining and bitching about you and calling you all sorts of names and telling you you're dumber than dirt, those people are probably some of your best customers as well. And so it doesn't do anything to get mad at, right? Because they are so invested in the system that they feel like they've got a vent on. They're taking time out of their boring day to talk about the thing that they're passionate about. And unfortunately, you're the target. But it's not personal. It's very Roadhouse, right? It's nothing personal.
Roadhouse.
It's the job.
Yeah.
Good analogy.
Right.
Wow. A couple questions from the audience I want to throw out there. And one, Gary, if I get it wrong, please correct me. So Gary early on said, who is going to take responsibility for the 10 ethereal thing, right?
That was, you guys they tried to kill me over that.
Yeah, Dave tells this story very well. Dave,
All right, here we go. All right.
So it's that same Winter Fantasy. So Bowman, Jason Bowman, has a Constitution score of 2, right? He is the guy that gets the con crud. He thinks about going to a show. The dude gets sick, and he can give me crap over, but he knows it's true. He's got a con score 2. It is his dump stat, without a doubt.
Yep.
I have a con score 20. I don't get sick ever. So we're at this Winter Fantasy where there's the $2 pitchers, right? Jason is the secret hidden circle member. And so we have our official circle meeting, which is just me, Jason, Steven. Bowman comes up with a bottle of Goldschlager from somewhere.
Oh my.
That's always a great idea.
Better than the Rumpelmints incident.
I love
we'll go into that one in a future episode. And so we're all trying to think of what we want the future plan to be. And we're like, man, we really need to shake stuff up, right? And this is after $2 pitcher, $2 pitcher, $2 pitcher. Well, I end up coming down sick, right? So Steven and Jason are chain smoking, like friggin' locomotives going down tracks, right? They are just chain smoking. I'm sitting in the window of the hotel, hiding behind the curtain with the window open, trying to get fresh air as I'm sick.
Sorry, Dave.
The only time I've been sick in the last 30 years, right? And so the conglomeration of $2 pitchers, Goldschlager, chain smoking, and me trying to breathe through a straw out a window, we decide to blow up 10. Right?
So it was the drunk. It was doing. That is amazing. Okay, so
right? We're like,
this is a great story.
But at the same point, we're like, every plot that we've had so far has just been kind of minor, right? Yeah. We have all these Greyhawk pieces that Gary and all the people before us left us in the box sets. And Gary and Eric Monin then put in that, the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer, right? When they put all of that together, right? But we were like, all right, we need something we own, right? It's ours. We're going to shake things up and really make people take notice, right? And so in that, we come up with, the Either Threat, right? Which was, I think, wrapped around the Book of Infinite Spells, right? The epic, that artifact.
The Codex of Infinite.
Yeah, the Codex of Infinite Spells, right? We wrap it around the Codex, which is secretly what all of the Ethers are after, right? They're drawn to it like moths to a flame.
That's great.
And so it's secretly hidden in 10, right? Which is why the Ethers end up there. And the Ethers get released in Isle of Woe, which was based on an island in the Near Div?
Yep.
That fades in and out, which is in canon somewhere. I don't remember where we pulled it from. But, Isle of Woe is what basically this island that fades in and out of existence is what had locked them away.
And who opened the door?
We know who opened up the door, right?
I maintain that when I opened the door that started this, was my character and a few friends of ours were the only table that got to the end and did so. Mm-hmm. I feel as though I was gypped a lot of XP because a lot of monsters died. I should have got a huge quantity of XP for unleashing that.
But it was funny because when Jason and I were writing Isle of Woe, I think Chris Tulloch helped us write that a bit as well. We knew who was going to make it to the end, and we knew which group was not going to be able to resist opening the door, right? And it was you guys. Right? We knew who was going to open the door, right? Part of the secret of writing a great adventure or being a great DM right? All adventures have rails, right? They all have rails. We all know they have rails. The secret of a great DM is suspending the belief of the players that those rails exist, right? And that was the great part, right? We're like, we know what the outcome is that we want, because as a storyteller, I know the ending that's going to be exciting. I need you to think you got there on your own volition, right? As opposed to, right? And so we knew who was going to open the door to open the Either threat. But yes, the Either threat all started with Goldschlager Beer and Steven and Jason trying to kill me, being chain smoking.
Unsuccessfully, obviously.
Unsuccessfully, I did
Seems
survive.
obvious now.
That 20 con paid off in the end.
That
Yep.
is.
And I told Jason this.
But that's that was the start. And I mean, it was really like, okay, we need to blow up a country. Well, we can't blow up a country we've assigned to anybody, right? We pretty much eliminated the southern half of the map, right? Because we've assigned all those to everybody else, right? And so poor Duchy of 10 was...
Which wasn't assigned a region for what, I mean, Stephen, we had talked to the other triads who were around and said the regions got assigned based on RPGA population play numbers, right? So the East Coast, which was well represented in the RPGA, got Joff and Keeland and whatnot, and that's why Australia ended up with Paraland or things like that. But for the audience, this Isle of Woe adventure was what we call 4 rounds. One round was designed to be played in 4 hours. So this was a 16-hour mega adventure. And I told Jason Bullman this. I was living in College Station. I drove to Austin for the weekend, spent the weekend on my buddy's couch, and we put together like a really solid APL 6 or something table for it. And that was just one of the first times that, I couch surfed for living Greyhawk, because that's how epic and big. Oh, dude, we're finally going to get to do Isles of Woe, because it had premiered at whatever big con.
Right.
And then it was released at the game days or whatever. And then it could be played in somebody's living room. And I remember they had printed up the maps on paper. Like someone went to the print shop so they could just whip them out, and it had the grids on them and everything. And this is what, 2002, 2003?
2003. Yeah.
2000,
So not digital printing, not as common as it is now. And we
All
just
about big plotters at the time.
yeah, we just all brought our minis, and it was, let's do this as fast as we can, without skipping the mod or anything like that. And we had spectators, because like where we were, they had their roommates or whatever, and they'd come check on us every once in a while, and we'd be like, can't talk, vampire mind flayer, or whatever it was in that adventure. So that was a great adventure. And I think Goldschlager's appropriate sometimes, and it's glad to hear that it helped create the Isles of Woe, which then you guys tied into, what is it, the Hands of Yagrax? The what's the tombs up north that got tied into that storyline?
Oh, I don't remember anymore.
That is so long ago. But yeah,
Zunk.
like when we originally ran Isle of Woes, we actually ran them in rooms that were hidden at Origins. And you actually had to line up outside, and we came out and got you and took you back to the hidden rooms.
Wow.
Where we had original Dwarven Forge terrain, right? We did it. And but we were putting red stickers where people died. Right, so players would sit down and they'd be like, well, what's up with all the red stickers? I don't know, let's find out, right? And made everybody kind of really, really creeped out a bit. But Jason and I were sitting kind of kitty corner. We were running the higher level, of the Isle of Woe. And behind us, we had the metal shields that were done up, right? And we had the Aya's shield behind us. And back in the day, there was certs, there was die bumps, right? The RPGA loved killing trees, right? They loved killing trees and handing out paperwork. And so people would hand us certs, and Jason and I would rip them up and say, "Attribute Dark Lord," and we would throw them over our head. And so throughout the convention, this pile of shredded paper built up around the chair that was with the Shield of Ayas, right? And by the time we were done, right, there was like a ream of shredded.
Was that Well of Woe, or was that?
That was Isle of Woe.
Or was that we also did that with when we ran Temple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Temple. Remember, everybody marched in for Temple, right?
Yeah,
all the DMs
everybody marched in as a
line
group.
and were chanting. And... But there was a
Wasn't-
rule with Isle of Woe that at any time, if your character could trace a line from his butt to the door that did not pass through a monster, you could put your hands up and go, whoa. Your
Right.
character was gone. Basically, it was the equivalent of your character turned and sprinted for the door
Get the
as
hell out of there.
fast as they could go. And that was your way to get out, right? So they were always like, it's not right. We got to keep a line to the door, right? So if we open up a door and there's something we don't want, it's time to run away.
Right.
Wasn't Isle of Woe also the genesis of the infamous Jason Bullman Magic Jar? When did you cast Magic Jar story?
That was the worst table. That was like it was like a whole table of high level characters, but there was only one person at the table who actually really knew how to play D&D. And it was like the friends that he talked to come with him to play the characters, and he would just
We could get all the certs.
Right? He would just tell everybody else at the table what to do. Yeah, that was Jason. He's like, "Did you cast Magic Jar on her?" Well, no. Well, then shut up. What is your character gonna do? And
I think he
didn't know
told
what
that
to do.
story.
They
Yep.
didn't. They had no. It would be like, I love my wife to death, but if I took my wife to a D&D game, she wouldn't know what dice to pick up. Right? That was the people that were at the table.
And they TPK'd shortly thereafter, right? Once,
Oh, yeah, it went
once
very
Jason wouldn't let
poorly.
him run all the characters.
Right, there was a room where remember third edition was all about the 5-foot step, right? You got to have that 5-foot step so I don't provoke an attack of opportunity. And there was a room where the ceiling and the floor were both animated with reach, right? So you couldn't move around this room really without taking more than a 5-foot step, or you just got your ass kicked by the floor and the ceiling nonstop. And of course, these people, once Jason told the person to shut up, had no clue about this and just started running around the room opening doors. Which another D&D thing, never open up a door until you're ready to open up a door. So they just opened up all these doors, which added encounters to more encounters to more encounters,
New
to
Road
attacks of
Jenkins.
opportunity, and it was just over. It was bad.
So Beth Damus and I are becoming friends because now that I know Beth works for PAX Penny Arcade.
Penny Arcade, yeah.
I love PAX Unplugged Philadelphia. So we're talking, and on the side here, that's what I'm doing, typing here, which is really fantastic
So
because.
you're chatting on my girlfriend. Is that what
Well, hey, I've been married
He's
25
married.
years. Don't worry. Don't worry. Yeah.
He's got a saint for a wife.
Yes.
You
Ah.
got to see his basement,
Yeah.
guys, and what he does with his crew. He's been running a great. I don't think we've talked about Jay's, chops here. He's been running a Greyhawk game for over 40 years.
Same campaign. Yeah.
Same campaign, like
Wow.
episode 900.
Same players,
coming up.
basically.
894 we're on.
Yeah.
We're on the 894 adventure, about 2,750 sittings is our guess. So with the same players, and it's
Nice.
just it's crazy. It's nuts. So I had a question here, and now my brain. Yeah, there's Tim is one of them. We got a lot of really fun things as far as the chat is going crazy with stuff. So Dave Guerreri, who we know is Greyhawk Reborn, who was a triad at Keelan, asked a while back, were you all expecting it to grow as fast as it did and how large it did, or did you get really caught off guard and that was part of the problem with burnout?
I think that in the very beginning, because at that point in time, Living City was in everybody's estimation, not only in the RPGA but the entire organized play department of Wizards of the Coast, they were all, that's what we're shooting for, and we're not going to get there. And then it became very clear by the end of year 0 and the beginning of year 1, no, we're going to exceed that. And then it was just bad timing that at that period of time is when Wizards of the Coast started basically reorganizing and paring down its massive organization. So I think once we were hitting the end of year 1, like it grew larger than we expected. But I told my bosses, I'm like, this thing is just going to keep on growing, right? Because it's doing things that other organized play programs haven't been able to do. And that we have to be able to be nimble and let them do it. Because everybody knew at Wizards of the Coast that the RPGA players were some of the biggest sort of basically product hounds, right? You know, it's a business. We want people to buy books. And if we could latch on to all of that, especially with the RPGA members, right, we were going to go in a good direction as far as sales and everything else was going. At the same time, at Wizards of the Coast, they were also like, oh, those goddamn RPGA players, right? There was this weird sort of back and forth between, man, they're big pains in the ass, but it's a good thing that they sell books. And I'm like, you've got to stop looking at them like they're big pains in the ass. Like, they are your cream of the crop. We want to consume everything. They're more likely to have subscriptions to the magazines. They're more likely to pick up everything on release date. They're more likely to keep on playing. And my big mantra, and Dave will remember this, is I want butts and seats. I want to go into the RPGA area and I want to see everybody sitting at a table and having a great time, because that kind of buzz just creates more buzz. If somebody walks into a room and they're like, what's this Dungeons and Dragons thing? And they just see a sea of people sitting there laughing or stressing and rolling dice and being excited, they're going to sit there and go, I want to be a part of this. And when I first started in the RPGA, and this was another big controversial thing, is it was all pipe and drape. Everybody was hidden behind pipe and drape, every single table, because they were afraid of like noise and everything else. And I'm like, no, just put it in a bigger room with a higher ceiling, small echo factor, because when I want people to walk in the RPGA, I want them to see banners and people just having a great time. And if you hide them behind pipe and drape, everybody's all like, oh, it's a sea of something. And so my whole goal within my entire stint of the RPGA and organized play is I want people to have fun playing D&D. I want people to be happy about the purchases and their ability to use things when new things come out. And I want everybody to see how much fun people are having playing D&D. And so once we got kind of that in our head and sort of shoved away some old predispositions, I knew the thing would just keep on growing as long as it could.
Well,
The open rooms, that is a beautiful thing to walk into.
Mm-hmm.
I think in 2003 or whenever I got into my first con, it was like AggieCon or something at College Station. You know, there were like 10 tables, probably 12 tables. But then you go to like Alcon in Houston, which is at Rice University.
I've been a
And then
guest of
you've-
Alcon.
Yeah, Alcons are great.
Yeah,
And
it's
that
fun.
convention doesn't depend upon living Greyhawk, right? It's old
No.
school gamers and college gamers, board games. And you know, the first year we were at Alcon, they had this in this small room, and there were maybe like 6 to 8 tables. But by the end of the campaign, they had to put us in a whole completely different building, and it looked like the frigging banquet hall from Hogwarts.
Yeah.
Because Rice is just super fancy. And you know, you could go to cons in Shreveport. We'd be just over the border from Texas is Shreveport, Louisiana. So we could do cross-regional yeomanry BK cons, even though that doesn't make sense in Greyhawk. And we'd be at like some podunk hotel, but we would take over the hotel's banquet rooms,
Mhm.
and you walk in and all of a sudden there's 20, 25 tables. And these aren't even big numbers for the East Coasters. You know, the East Coasters have talked about cons where they have 30 tables at a time, or probably even 40 for the Joff Keeland cross regional. So it's a great idea not to do the dividers, because
Yeah.
it's almost like a casino for nerds.
Right.
When
But
you
it's
walk
like
in,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
and all the
Saga
dice
Ball.
rolling
Yeah.
and the yelling, people
Yeah.
standing up at their chairs during a tense scene. Like,
Yeah.
you know, as a Triad member, I got to create some of these moments. Like, you'd hear people like, oh shit, it's a dragon, or it's X, Y, and Z NPC. You know, these weren't just throwaway adventures. People were heavily invested in them. So
No, but I
Yeah,
remember I'm sorry, Anko.
Oh, I was going to say it's a very impressive when I go to Gen Con at the Saga Mall ballroom. It's amazing to see a sea of hundreds of tables full of people playing, having fun, and also before they run like a specials, the tension, everybody's waiting and stuff. It's amazing. It's just awesome. Yeah.
But man, when I made that change, I got told a lot. Steven, what are you doing? I'm like, trust me, watch this.
And the Sagamore Ballroom, right? That's what I migrated to, right? So when you were in the Sagamore Ballroom, that's what I do now, right? I was running those events, right? So I went from living Greyhawk to running Gen Con and those type of shows. But I still fight those fights, Stephen, all the time, right? People are like, well, we can put you in a bunch of smaller rooms, or we can give you some more space. And I always bring up the example of what I call the overfull bar, right? When you go to a bar and there's a small line at the door and it's packed, you think to yourself, hey, this is a happening place, right? This is, I want to be, there's some cool stuff going on here.
Right.
And, the manager, and it was when I used to own a gaming store back in the day, and he was the bar next door. He's like, yeah, he goes, I thought about renting your space, but he's like, if I double my space, but I only bring in an extra 20% people for the extra space that I have, I'll be seen as a failure, even though I'm technically bringing more people in, right? Because now people are coming into the space and going, man, there's a lot of empty tables over there. There's a lot of empty space. This place isn't as happening, right? There's the balance of, I want enough space that I can run the tables I want, but I always want to be seen as full and hopping, because people like to do, like you walk, like you guys said, you walk into the Sagamore, there was a buzz, right? The room was full, the dice were rolling, every table had somebody at it, right? That's what you want.
Yeah. And even my last couple of years, they kept on trying, Gen Con kept on trying to get us into smaller spaces. And I fought it tooth and nail. I'm like, no, I want a big space. I want people to walk in and go, what is this? And it's all like, oh, this is D&D, right? This is, at that point in time, we had more than Living Greyhawk going on for various reasons. But and even, in my Paizo days, when I found out that they were going into Sagamore and everything else, I'm like, never get rid of that space, right? Because people just walk in and they're like, what? And just the thrill of that, I think did a lot to help. And there are other practical things that where my mind goes through, and my bosses were like, Steven, that will never happen. And I'm like, you create a whole bunch of blind areas like that, bad actors will do bad things. If you have it all out in the open, bad actors will think twice. And
great point.
And we had problems with how many GMs we were putting in hotel rooms and everything else. And I'm like, we need to have fewer GMs in hotel rooms, because it's just at a point in time, chaos will take over and something bad will happen, and then we will be liable. Which everybody's like, oh, it's just D&D players, nothing will happen. And there was a couple of very close calls over the years. But I think a lot of things,
Wow.
even within Wizards of the Coast, is as I kind of took a look at it as programs and events and people getting together and the fun and underlying chaos that would occur, my bosses just thought I was crazy. Over time they were all like, oh yeah, I guess this could be a problem. I'm like, yeah, it's not a problem now. It may not be a problem next year, but eventually it'll be a huge problem. And when it's a huge problem, it's going to be a really bad, huge problem. So we might as well fix it now. Yeah, one of the things, I think there were so many things that contributed to Greyhawk's success. First and foremost, everybody who ever worked on it, their dedication, even the people who burnt out and left, right? There was an amount of dedication that they put into the system and everything else for the love of the game and everything. And it's something that I don't think you could even create anymore, right? Because people are a little bit more business savvy about events and about what can go on. I was really happy to see the way that Adventurers League sort of stepped up to the plate and took on some of those issues and actually made it a better business plan for mostly the modern day. I remember arguing with Tulak about some things when I came back to Wizards and he was in my old position. He's like, why didn't you do this? And I'm like, well, I stepped away for 6 months. I see it in a different lens now, and I really think you should consider this and this and this. And he used to get just like, why didn't you do it? I'm like, nah, I was too close to it. And the other thing was opening it up and showing people that that D&D wasn't just something that was shoved in the shadows, that people are actually having a good time playing it, and it might be something you want to try. As our struggle always to be more inclusive, right? I remember when I was a kid, I started playing D&D when I was 12, and I was the kid who was very excited and went to a whole bunch of older people who were like, shut up, kid, go away. And I did not want the RPGA to be that. I didn't want D&D to be that.
Here.
I wanted it to be this big open thing that I found extremely fun, right? And I couldn't be the only one, right? And so just opening it up like that and letting people come in and at least sample the system and see if it was their brand of fun, and not it being this exclusionary club that you had to buy into, I was also extremely proud of, right? Because I think playing role-playing games and D&D in particular is some of the funnest things you could have, you can do. Like the first time I played D&D when I was 12 and it was against the Giants and everything else, I was just hooked. And I'm still hooked. And being an extremely kind of self-conscious, geeky kid at that point in time, who was very nervous about dealing with people who were older than me or a bit snarky and everything else. I didn't want somebody, a kid who was, the me, then me, but now to ever feel like they would be excluded from that fun.
Cool.
And we had kids in the BK. We had parents bring their 8-year-old, their 10-year-old. One of the I can't remember her name for the life of me, and I can see the parents are their face is clear as day, but they brought her and she was wearing her chainmail and her elf ears, and she had this kick-ass elf in her halfling rogue, and she did great.
Yeah.
And it's not like her parents were coaching her. I'm pretty sure she started coaching her parents at some point. So we had a couple great, kid players, but it's looking back on it now, it's like, man, what if Living Greyhawk could have done like a LG for kids, and then you have to, you take all the safety precautions because, there's always a danger.
Yeah.
But that would have been great, because then you're having the next generation of players get introduced to
Yeah.
Greyhawk, and hopefully current online gaming and maybe Greyhawk Reborn and everyone else out there can help get a younger generation interested in the setting, because right now Wizards of the Coast, just really isn't doing much with it. Yeah, we've got Ghosts of Saltmarsh and the Tasha's book, which I'm currently reading through, things like that. But
there's a sprinkle of Greyhawk in a lot of products, but
Yeah.
The average age of the player has gone down.
yeah,
that's wonderful. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's definitely, we try to do things with kids nowadays. Some things we can do, some things we can't, but there's definitely like Dave, you've got the kids track. Like that's a great,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of big cons.
I know for
Speaking
the longest time, the average age of a gamer was pretty much hooked to, I think, like my generation and Steven, right? It was hooked to our butts, and we were dragging it towards retirement. So it's really, really nice to see that trend, do 180 degrees and head the other direction.
But yeah, even then, I think that started Living Greyhawk is, every year that I go to Gen Con, and I always would, or Origins or whatever, and I'd scan the tables, and I'm like, and I was pleased. I'm like, there are younger people here. There are more people of color here. There are more women who are playing this game. Like, and that even in my Paizo days, when I would go to the Sagamore and watch people play Pathfinder Society, was the same thing. There was definitely younger people and people who were different than me growing up, enjoying that game, and which made me very, very, very happy, because I felt like I spent most of my childhood trying to convince friends and relatives that this was actually really fun, and it seems to need less convincing these days, which I'm extremely happy about.
Yeah. One good fun memory from Gen Con, I think it was 2 years ago. I always take one day at Gen Con walking around, seeing all the things that you normally don't see when you stand in a booth all day. And
Right.
and then so I got over to, I think it was the first year, or the second year, they had the stadium as well, Lucas Oil Stadium. And in there they had a kids arena with small kids could have buffer weapons and beat each other up. And there was one guy, he was dressed up as a paladin, and he was supposed to oversee this and make sure that the kids didn't kill each other, and on the sidelines, and the kids were kind of, they've gotten their helmets and their buffer weapons, and they were kind of a little bit, and then the parents stood on the sidelines and were like cheering on their kids, and damn, that was the most fierce fights I've ever seen. they were banging each other up so tough, and they had to separate them. But it was real fun to see, and damn, there were all sorts of dirty tactics everywhere. And the poor guy that had to try and get, I realized they tried to mangle him too, and it was hilarious to watch it. They were supposed to have all these safety rules or whatever. It took like 2 seconds, and that all went out the window. So I don't think they ran that for more than a few hours, but it was fun to watch.
So real quick, Dennis Maldron Tetro gave me, and I linked this at a previous show, the superstar in youth picture below, and in the right lower hand corner is Steven's gut. Your head is
Oh, that's
missing.
right.
Oh,
That is my gut.
I can probably name almost all of the people.
Yeah, look at that. I mean, look at that crew there. Just run through some of the names in that picture.
So there's Sean Reynolds, there's Russ, there's Eric,
Dennis.
Robert.
Yep. Dennis is in there.
Yep.
Is James in that one? James Jacobs or no?
No.
No, he's not.
No.
No. Okay.
I was thinking between Dennis and Sean K. Reynolds, is that Russ Taylor?
Yeah, that's
Russ
Russ Taylor.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard
Fred.
time seeing.
So
It's a
Dennis
very
says
small
Fred.
picture.
Fred.
See if I can.
So, yeah, I can here. I'll cover my head. How's that sound? Oh no.
Oh, hold on. I just hit
I
speak
said,
with
I
you.
think when that picture was taken, I probably had hair. I mean, that's a while ago.
Yeah, just pin mine there, Stephen, and you'll be able to see it a little bit better.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do see it. So I remember this was. I think
Fred
this
Whining
was-
is between between Eric and Dennis. Okay.
Right.
Yep.
All right.
There are people I remember, but I don't remember the name. There
Okay.
was.
Sam Weiss is far left, according to Dennis.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sam's in there.
Yeah, there's Sam. And I haven't heard
Yeah.
that name in forever.
Yeah.
He's
Man, him and
pretty
I used to
active
butt
on
heads.
social media.
Oh
is
yeah,
pretty
he is. We
Cannon
should see if
Fire
we
and
could get
stuff.
him in here. Yeah.
Yeah, someone shoot
Yeah.
Sam an invite. Have him reach out. to me.
Sean, Russ, those folks there. This had to be when this had to be very early on when I was still
Oh yeah.
2000.
this was 2000 when it was all like, so we're doing what?
What a
It's all
crew.
like, yeah.
Wow.
Met a lot of really, really fantastic people. A lot of folks that
2001, Dennis says. Noel Watcher
2000.
Graham is front far left. Okay, here's another name. So, man, what? Dennis, thank you for sharing that. I know, I had that and put that out on a previous show, but thank you so very much. And I'm going to let it scroll through everything else here, so we have that. But just too bad we don't have Steven's head. We just got the half of Steven in that picture.
Steven.
Yes, so that is really cool. So Mike, you've been quiet. Anna, you've been kind of quiet. You guys have any questions for the group tonight?
Oh, let's see here.
Mike's
I was
like,
thinking, yeah. Mike, you haven't said anything, so it's your turn to say something before I.
he's just enjoying this conversation,
Yeah,
which
he's
is
also muted. so-
extremely entertaining.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, I've had too much background noise to
Oh,
stay unmuted.
Okay.
I guess I could throw out the easy question. You guys have anything, any mementos from the Living Rock days that you hung on to?
Great question.
Yeah, bust out the shields, guys.
Yeah.
I gave away my shield. I had
That was insane.
no.
So
I-
Chris
yeah.
Chris Tulloch gave me the IU shield, and when I started working at Paizo, I was all like, "This is really nice, but it really should belongs to Jason." And so I gave it to Jason, and I think it's probably sitting in his office at Paizo, which he probably hasn't. been
Jason
to.
showed it to us, didn't he?
I think he referenced that he had
Yeah.
it. I think
Yeah, I
exactly.
think he said
it's
that he
at
had
the
it at
office.
the office, and he was.
Yeah.
He has the IU shield.
He has the IU shield.
Yeah, that's it. Okay.
Cool.
He has
And
the
Greg
IU
there
shield.
had the high
Uh,
flow.
And then with the high
So-
foot. Yeah, awesome.
So hold on a second. You're gonna see my entire crazy.
Oh, there we
Oh,
go.
cool.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah.
Banner.
Where'd that banner come
fantastic.
from?
That's
Yeah.
nice.
That banner was given.
Oh my
to
gosh,
me
Eric
by-
Mona's on.
by the on-wall guys when I went to Greyhawk or Gen Con London, either the first or the second time. To the right of that on a shelf, or it would be well, let me go grab it.
Okay.
Another thing that I have.
Eric, I'm going to put it out there. You're free to hop on if you want to hop on and hobnob with everyone here.
Absolutely.
Please do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh,
We only got another half hour, so
Awesome.
a little
Yep.
bit.
Origins. Tulak
Yeah,
gave it to us
this was
at the
the
meet.
finale little box
Cool.
Oh, I got so
Thanks for
yelled
hopping
at
on,
for that
Eric.
meeting.
filled with all kinds of
Yeah.
random mementos that I have.
Thanks for donating to this too, Eric. What a great gift from the
Yeah.
community.
Yeah, so-
Thank you so very much.
The Greyhawk shields, Britt had like the Rook Roost one, and I haven't gotten it back from him, or haven't stolen it from him. I'm a
Yeah.
bad BKer.
Oh,
Then I've got
But
that.
Conrad has a story,
Nice.
right? He had one of the shields, the Joff or the Grand March shields, and the players came up to him at Gen Con and traded him the March of Pomarge, or the Pomarge
Nice.
shield for it.
So those shields went out at Gen Con, right? Steven, I think you had them made up years before
No, they were
So-
made up in Eric's time.
in Eric's
Like,
time. And
yeah.
so they all came to a Gen Con, and we were running the D&D dungeon delve, right? And by running through the delve, you could earn tokens. And so we put out all the shields, and we put some total stupid token count, like something that you couldn't achieve by yourself. And it was awesome because all of the players from different regions started pooling all their resources and just kept playing this event again and again and again and again, almost like they had to earn their shield and take it home before those bastards from somebody else took it and stuck it away,
Yeah.
right?
And there ended up being a lot of like horse trading.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I know, like that High Folk Shield was actually part of a 4-way trade to get it to come home, and to make sure that basically to get the regional admins back their shields. There was like a big trade.
Which is where my Valuna shield, right, from back in the day ended up with Tim Setch, right, who
Yeah.
was the Valuna triad after me and ended up being the circle member that ended up replacing me, right? It ended up going to him, which the collector in me kicks a bucket, right? Because I've kept everything ever. But for some reason, I let that, slip through my hands.
So in the inside baseball thing with the shields, as the shields were made in year zero, they're these big honking metal heavy things, and all of them were made, and they all sat through most of the year in a warehouse in Tukwila, which is just south of the Wizards of the Coast offices. And eventually my bosses were all like, you need to get rid of those shields. One, because we're spending so much money carting them around. Two, they're taking up so much space in the warehouse.
Wow.
And so it was like, well, I just don't want to throw them out. They deserve to somehow be put back in the thing. And so we came up with the plan of well, can we do this? And they're like, yes. And that way they would end up going back out into the audience in some way, shape, or form. But it was basically Wizards was just sick of them sitting in the warehouse for most of the time.
For this
So they
past
went into that
year.
road case, right? There was this giant, massive,
yeah.
6x8x10 road case that looked like I was about to pull speakers out for a concert.
Right.
And it would show up to every show. And it was like Christmas, right? You opened up the road case and what was in it? And I opened it up at Gen Con and I'm like, there's a bunch of large metal semi-rectangular things in paper. What the heck is all this? Oh yeah, Dave, you're going to give those away. Awesome.
Right.
Think about this. Tonight we've learned the following. The Ether Threat plot was done over drunkenness Goldschlager, right? Drinking Goldschlager. And you gave away the shields because no one wanted to carry them anymore. Just amazing.
Basically.
Amazing.
To be fair,
been
most
seeing
of the
these
good
shields.
plots came from
wow. That is unbelievable.
Jay's been seeing these shields for the
Yikes.
past year of these shows, and his audience and various members of us chipped in. Jay, grab that thing and bang on it because they found out who had manufactured those shields 20 years ago, Steven.
My Order of Ulick symbol from my campaign, metal, yeah.
And they swear it's the same company.
Yeah.
I don't.
and-
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, but
Oh,
when
that's
you
right.
Google that, that doesn't exist anymore. So they had to do some
Not
sleuthing.
surprised.
Yeah, it's
Right.
beautiful. It is awesome, and
So,
it's
yeah.
going on when we redo the gaming room for the Thursday nights. It's going on the back wall, which is going to be coming over the holidays too. But what an honor for this. And Extort is the gentleman who set it up. Derek and everyone contributed. Eric did too as
It
well,
was
which
a
was
big
yeah.
conspiracy for a month or two.
Oh
to get
yeah,
that
and they
done.
shocked me, and I actually was in tears on the show when it happened. And it happened real quick. It happened. The show happened the week before we did the. Len had just passed, and that was rough. And it was really good pick me up because we we didn't want to do the tribute show 2 days after Len's passing, so we held that off a week, and that we did it. And they surprised me. And my buddy Tim came in full armor gear, did announcements. It was
Yeah.
unbelievable. So if you can see that episode, everyone. What a fantastic show that was. Carlos was on. We had a lot of people on the show. It was great. And yeah, they're a manly tear seeker, thanks. But it was such an honor. So now I sit in my chair now
The
and
shields
show
are
it.
brilliant.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
We also used to do banners for the special events, right? We had an Isle of Woe banner. We had
yeah, it's cool.
and those
Yeah.
used to go out to people at the shows, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
have 3 or 4 of the banners out of my garage. So I have a Living Greyhawk banner. I got an Isle of Woe banner. And we used to send them out to players. But what happened is one of them went to a player, and the player took it back to his local store and put it up in his local store and said, look, we're an officially sanctioned Wizards of the Coast organized play store. See our fancy banner. And so, of course, all the other local stores called Wizards customer support and said, hey, this local store says they're official and they got this snazzy banner. Where's our banner?
Yeah.
Of course, Wizards said, what are you talking about? And so, like most good things, that was the end of that. And no banners went out to anybody. Unfortunately, most banners actually get X-Acto knives, right, taken to them at the end because one store couldn't play nice
Yeah.
and ruined it for everybody else.
That's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that, as I was in the organized play department and everything else, is the great thing about is the card side folks. So when I first started working in the RPGA, it almost seemed like the card side folks and the RPGA did not talk to one another. They just didn't. There was a weird divide, even though we were in cubicles in the same sort of area. And then the reasons of that, I don't know what they are, but when it became basically just me, and then later on when they brought Ian Richards over, the Magic and DCI people were very cool at like, so Stephen, we do this at shows. Would you like to do this at shows? Like things like banners and stuff like that. And like for the first year or something, because I was all, why don't we give out books at the big events, mostly to our GMs who work so hard and everything else. And they're like, they're very expensive, Stephen. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess, we don't have the budget for it. And then when the budget became a little bit more transparent, I saw everything, I'm like, these are not that expensive and we can totally do this and whatnot. And so that's when we started bringing folks from R&D who would sign whatever books they were doing and giving them out to GMs and stuff like that. And there was just a whole lot of sort of weird momentum, partially in the divide that, Wizard of the Coast had bought TSR, people from TSR came in, they were dealing with the sort of new thing. And the RPGA got shoved into the organized play department, and everybody seemed to not know how to play well with one another for a little while. And so some of the things that we were able to do in order to make conventions, I would say, with a bit of bias, more fun and more open and more interactive and everything else, was just me being able to pick the brains of the people that I worked with around me who were already doing these massive sort of showy events and whatnot, and piggybacking the best ideas from them in order to do that.
I'm still sending out books. It's all your fault.
Sorry, man.
Except now
people
with it
like
being
books.
virtual cons,
Oh yeah.
it's virtual cons, which means they all get shipped to my house. Which
Mm.
of course my wife loves nothing more than a giant pallet of nerds sitting in the driveway. Right.
Oh.
And I have to turn around and remail them out to everybody.
She did marry a giant pallet of nerd.
This is true. She should have known what she was getting into.
Yeah.
I think she knew. She had to know.
Yeah,
But I
she's
think at
pretty
this
smart.
point, I did an estimate once. I think I've sent over 12,000 D&D books out to DMs over
Wow.
the years.
yeah, not
So-
surprising.
How long has AL been running now?
Since
Adventures League?
2014,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, 2014.
So
And
Good.
sorry, and to dive
Sorry,
into
Mark.
this a little bit, right?
And we're in
So Dave, you
season
run
10.
cons.
I run the big cons. Yep.
You run the big cons, and you need content. And Greg organizes.
Literally
the
my job
content.
title, content manager.
Nice.
So Greg, you are herding the cats. That is Eric Menge out of Joff, right? As an author, and Sean
Sure.
Merwin.
Merwin.
Merwin,
Merwin's
yeah.
actually Merwin's now an admin. Sean is the content manager for the Eberron campaign, Oracle of War.
Okay.
And so Eric Mengi actually works for me running our Moonshay Isles campaign.
Yep.
That we do for AL for the Forgotten Realms.
Wow. So you have like a regional admin, so to speak, where because he said he got picked because the Moonshays are so close to the Fey giant kind of Joff
Yep.
vibe, it was a natural fit.
Yeah. So when we got that area, like we decided, I was working with Sean Merwin that you mentioned, and we decided, Moonshay Isles was the area we wanted, right? Is, with its strong Fey connections, right? Of course, the first person I thought of was Eric, right? From his work with Jeff and Living Greyhawk back in the day. And he was the first stop, right? I pinged Eric and I'm like, hey, here's this cool thing I got. These are the things that we want to try to do. And he's like, I'm in. I'm like, all right, that was easy.
And
I
then you've
regret
got-
that now as we were approaching the end of the campaign, but too late. Once again, he didn't follow the rule and run and hide in the closet. Therefore, he has been
He
put to
didn't
work.
learn his lesson.
He did not
and
learn
you-
his lesson.
You've got Ron Lundeen doing Pathfinder stuff for Pezo.
Yeah.
A former Keelan. No, I'm getting this wrong. Divers.
Verblanc.
Verblanc, yeah.
Verbal-
Verbabonk, not Divers.
Yes,
How do
Ron was with Verbank, with Vernon and
I-
Yeah.
Alright.
Ruby and all of them back in the day.
Chris
Menza.
Tulloch at the Wizards was former High Folk. I got to meet him during a convention one time. That was great fun back in the day.
Mike
Well,
Burrow, Keeland.
Earls.
Yeah,
I tried to
reach
Keeland
out
back
to
at the
him.
beginning.
Yep, we'll try and get him on a future show.
Well, and not only so, Beth, my girlfriend, who's the CFO of Penny Arcade, when they did the Acquisition Inc. book, I was like, "Oh, who do you have working on it?" It's like,
I've
"Oh,
got
Sean
that.
Merwin," and I'm like,
That's good enough.
Good call."
Another person
Yeah.
who can't say no.
Yeah,
Right.
And Teos,
yeah.
right?
Teos
Right.
is in the
Teos, yeah.
audience.
He's been poking around in the chat. I've seen him poking around.
Yeah. Teos used to come to Houston, I believe, for work, and he can correct me if he's wrong. Teos, I may tell some lies here. You can correct me. He used to come to Houston, and he's always looking for games, right? When you could travel for work back during Living Greyhawk, you'd take your stuff with you, and you would try and rustle up a game. Well, he came to Houston, and I took it as a point of pride when I had time to like try and run games for visitors from out of region, because if I got to travel, they were trying to do that for me. I just didn't get to travel very much. So we did get to host Teos at a couple BK tables over the years, and we had great fun, and it, got to become friendly and still keep in touch a little bit over the years. And then we co-wrote a special mission together because we had a BK player go off to Joff, play one of their regional mods, and had like a Fey baby, a half Fey baby as a something on the adventure record. And he comes back to the BK and he's like, what am I going to do about this Fey baby? And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Because it was from a different region. The character explained it to me. I reached out to Teos, who I knew was from that area and had been writing stuff. And we co-wrote a special mission together, which as far as I know is the only multi-region special mission in Living Greyhawk history. But I can easily be corrected if any of you know better, but it was set in the Feywild or whatever we call Teos. What do you,
Yeah, it wasn't the Feywild back
it was
then,
not the
that's
Feywild, but
yeah.
it's the
I think it was just
Unseelie
called
realm,
Fairy.
the
Unseelie,
Seelie or
yeah.
Unseelie realm. And it started in the Felry Forest in the BK, and then this guy goes to the Unseelie realm and gets to see his kid, and then comes back to the BK. So anyway, just a little quick primer for the audience on who this Teos guy and why he's a great guy.
Is Teos Alpha Stream?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it was always fun
Ah.
seeing players, players from different regions come to your table because they were so different, right? The crew from Divers would show up in Valuna and they'd be putting everything they could steal, everything they could somehow do a deal with, everything that involved money, right? It was all who's paying us, who's not paying us, and if he isn't paying us, can I steal from him, right? And then Bandit Kingdoms was all about, well, we're not really good, right? But we're kind of, maybe we're pretending we're good for today, right? It was fun because when those groups showed up with characters that were really designed for the region that they were from, and then they traveled, it was a lot of fun watching somebody interact with your region's storyline coming from a completely different place. Like they might not even care about your storyline. They're like, whatever, we don't care if the town burns. We don't care if the kids in the orphanage are right.
No.
Where's the bank? Right.
And that can be
the
so
bank okay?
frustrating. But then I would go and do that to the yeomanry people.
Oh yeah.
When I played, I'd be like, I don't give a shit about I need to do this to get in the army, or I need to do this to own land and vote. I'm just gonna go kill monsters in your swamp and then I'm gonna leave.
I remember going to Dragon Con with a table of everyone is an elf, right? Because we're from High Folk. Everyone's an elf. And it's Grand March. So you're all in the army now. Start by digging latrines. And we're like, we don't do this. Yeah, you do, because we need you to do this so that we can murder all the elves. That mod went a very different way very quickly.
In Valuna, right? Valuna was, we weren't totally unique, but if you were in Columbus, you could reach 5 different regions by driving 2 hours, right? Every state that touched us was a different region. And we used to have a joke that the Valuna plot line was not actually moved forward by anybody from Valuna. Right? Because if you think about it, when we would run these big shows, which is kind of where I got the start, we'd run 200-300 table shows. It was like all hands on deck. All the Valuna players were running tables, right? Especially if we were doing an interactive. We're doing an interactive, the Siege of Mitric, right? All the DMs are running the tables, and all the tables are full of Keelan, High Folk, for Babong, right? So all of our plot, whether Mitric falls or survives, actually had nothing to do with anybody that was from Valuna, right? We were really hoping that our neighbors were really nice, didn't send us a bunch of butt munches that were going to ruin the whole thing.
I know the only way we made our local cons work was the 2 weekends prior to the convention. You ran everything. Like you had slot zeros. We're gonna run 20 tables of slot zeros so that all our DMs can actually, because otherwise no one would DM because the adventures, they were so invested in the story. And I remember one of the very first slot zeros I was a part of, it had to be clear that the results of the slot zeros counted because everyone cared about the story so much that if their critical events don't count, because that's what they cared about, they would not DM.
Right. It's a living campaign. They want to impact the campaign.
They don't want the bastards from Bandit Kingdoms coming and everything up, right?
Exactly.
And we would.
And it's funny now because I try to explain like what a slot zero is to the DMs of the Adventures League era, right? 5th edition, right? The last 6 years. And you talk about slot zero, and there's just blank looks, right? They just don't get that level of investment of, I'm just going to run the adventure and I don't get to play it. Who cares? Right? As opposed to, no, I want to play this with my character. I want to have some, right? I think people thought that you had a greater effect on the story when you had Living Greyhawk regions than you think the effect that you have on a story that's, right? It's the entire world, right? There's tens of thousands of people playing it in a hardback, right? And you just don't feel that you have as much control as you did. You went to an interactive, a single character could totally change the entire interactive, whether it's a success or a failure.
Absolutely.
And you don't have that anymore. And it's for good and it's for bad, right? The good, it was great that we had it, but it chewed through manpower at a rate that was utterly unsustainable.
Right.
But
I wrote special missions because of what people did in interactives, and that got run once for one table, and yet it still took a third of the amount of work, of writing a regular adventure. I just didn't have to deal with the formatting or giving it up to circle level review. And I think we should give a quick shout out to Pathfinder Society. Stephen, I don't know if you're involved at all in Pathfinder Society in your days at Paizo, but I do know that the judges there can run an adventure and it's not eating it. They can play in it
Yeah.
after they've run it. So I do think that is a brilliant change.
It's the
To the
same.
paradigm.
Yeah, AL's the same way.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Running an
Pretty much
adventure
all
does
the
not
organized
preclude
plays do
play.
that now.
Okay.
So-
well, that's a good change.
Interestingly enough, that's one of the biggest arguments when I came back to work at Wizards in R&D, and I went down and talked to Chris Tulloch, and we were working on 4th edition. We were talking about the 4th edition organized play paradigm, and I'm like, just let people rerun stuff, right? Just I don't think I care anymore. And he's, what are you talking about, Stephen? What are you talking about? And I'm like, part of this whole thing is there was so much, both in Living City and a bit in Living Greyhawk, is you get people who would either talk to their buddies who'd already played it, right? Sort of figure out the stuff anyway and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, we trust people to actually just role play. We should just trust people to actually role play.
Yeah.
And yeah, and you do lose some of that magic that I think Living Greyhawk had, but at the same time, I'm a butts and seats guy. I want a lot of people playing D&D, and I like taking down those barriers in order for them to do it. So if that means a GM doesn't have to eat an adventure, or, oh crap, we don't have enough players, but you've already played the adventure, we need to find somebody else, right? We're all adults, or at least very serious-minded kids.
According to
We
our
can
tax records, we were all
We
about
can do this.
According to our
right?
taxes.
And so I think in some ways, while the magic of the regional system and everything else was really fantastic at the time, I actually think that the way that play works now is a lot more inclusive. And so while you may lose some of that story magic, it really makes the quality of your GM will infuse that as much as they can into a table, and it's just better the more people play.
And it just makes it so much easier from a running a con standpoint too. Like, you no longer have all the, like, those people who would be your best DMs. Well, I can't DM the epic or the interactive or whatever we're calling it these days, because you can only play it once. Well, now that
Right.
that's not a thing, okay, well, you can run 4 slots for me and you can still play it in a 5th slot and it's fine.
I mean, leading up to a Gen Con, right? I have 200, 220 people working for me DMing at a Gen Con. I'd almost have to run 2 weekends of mini cons before the
Wow.
show,
Yeah.
just handling the DMs, right?
Yeah.
Before we even got to the
wow,
show,
Yeah.
Yeah, just getting them up to speed. Yeah.
I
right?
mean,
So
even in the
before the
BK,
show
we would do
starts,
like a day or two. Wow.
I run 140 tables, right?
Wow.
And just
Oh my
DM, right?
gosh.
Yeah. This is something, now we're talking about what's happening now and speculating. I was going to, now we have so much living campaigning experience here in so I want to pick your brains and idea of where do you see the living game space going in the future, so to speak? Is this something that will be, what kind of campaign do you think that the living campaign would be in 10 years or in 5 years? And when we get over COVID and we can actually game in the same room again, or we can game online, where do you see future games like this from publishers and stuff, or where do you want it to go?
There is so many people wanting to play D&D right now.
Yeah.
Even with us being in the middle of a pandemic, right? We shifted to online, with what I do back in June, right? And so far I've run, I don't know what it is, 12 or 15,000 people on virtual games of D&D over just the last few months. And the demand is there from established players and just new players, right? Every show is hundreds and hundreds of new players who've done nothing but just watch people play online, right? Whether
And so
it's
many
Matt
people from
Mercer
around
or
the world.
what's it?
So many people from around the world. The number
Yeah,
of
we had a table. We had a table with a guy play. He was a Catholic priest from Rome. Was sitting at one of our tables, and he was playing a rogue. Right.
Yeah.
And he would have
I ran a table with
Right.
a Brit, 2 Australians, a Russian, and a Spaniard. I was the only American at the table, and they were all like not together.
And, I mean,
Wow.
the demand for people playing, right? So what, if I look at what's organized play going to be in the future, I think it always just needs to be focused around, there's all these super new and excited players. That barrier has to be kept as low as possible, right? It all comes back around to 20 years of Stephen and I saying butts and seats, right? If you keep that barrier as low as you can and give people like they feel like they're part of something bigger,
right? It'll just keep rolling over, right?
Yeah.
Wash, rinse, repeat again and again and again and again.
I mean, I think Living Greyhawk could definitely stretch what they could do with that based on what they saw in Living City, and the regional system was really interesting at the time. But that was also a product of the time. Like our regions are like not only even before COVID, but with Zoom and all of the ways that it's very easy to reach out and play with people all over the world. Yeah, I think those barriers are just going to start to break down, and the only thing that's going to tangle it up is time zones.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had the Australian triad on in a previous show, and
Yep.
we had to coordinate pretty hardcore for them to be on the show, let alone someone trying to do a virtual convention. But it just in the past few years alone, like 4 years ago, I was trying to play Roll20, with a group of friends, and we all weren't quite understanding what we were doing. And now I have a different group, my home campaign here in Boston. A year ago, I put out a blast like, hey, I'm going to run Ghosts of Salt Marsh. Who wants to play? I got like friggin' 9 players.
Oh yeah.
10 years ago, I would have gotten like 4 or 5 maybe, and they all would have been hardcore grognard types. Well, these people were, they're 5e, so that makes it an entry at this point, versus say AD&D for this crowd. And all 9 of them, I get at least 7 showing up. We play monthly, and now we're doing virtual because of the COVID. Well, then Jay does his virtual Greyhawk Con. I haven't done any other virtual con yet, and I ran a Bandit Kingdoms adventure as a tournament. So people from all over the place, some in the audience, got to play a Bandit Kingdoms adventure for the first time ever.
Yeah.
And I think John from Zyfe ran some Zyfe adventures, and I think the Greyhawk Reborn guys
Ran
who
15.
had to tread a very thin
Yeah.
legal line, right? Only the mod author could run the adventure previously to avoid getting in legal trouble with Wizards of the Coast. Now they can run things online. So I think the virus, as crappy as it is for our planet and our country and our loved ones who's been impacted, has shown us that there is another way of gaming, and we want to do both. I think I want to do sit at a table and gaming, and I think sometimes in the future I'm going to want to play virtually. Like, hey, I've got a buddy who's in California, and I would love to play some D&D with them.
The one thing that Living Campaigns really tapped into, and we see this not only in tabletop role-playing games, but even MMOs and whatnot, is role-playing games and D&D in particular have this whole thing that I'm going to be part of a story. I'm going to be invested in this story, and the story is going to go on for a long period of time. And characters may come in and out. It could be like a novel and whatnot. But the RPGA before that was doing the classics, and every classic was you somebody gave you a character, and you did a thing, and that might have been fun. But I think everybody stepped back and goes, well, I want my character to do my things, and so when Living City came out, like all of the gravity went there, and when Living Greyhawk came out, all of the gravity went there. And Living Campaigns just do better because it's a more natural form of what you actually want out of these games. And so, like right now, I run Delve games, and I've got Iconics and everything else, and I'm working on and I get people to play those games and tell me what they think of it and everything else. But if I start talking online about, okay, I'm going to do a Delve campaign where you get to make your own character, blah 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 blah, I get tons of messages. When are you starting this? When are you going to do this? This is what I like. I like what I've seen so far, but I really want to see what I can create, what I can make, and everything else. And so, and that's really the future. Living Campaigns are in a way that, sort of mass consumption of these games can act like how you expect the game to really act in the way that I get to make my character. I get to go on stories. I get to interact with things. I get to make a difference. And so it's as long as an organized play system or just any kind of system gravitates towards that style of play, you're going to get more players.
Right.
That ability to spread the excitement. So your 5 friends who go to Gen Con get to play in the new hotness, and then they go back and now they each have a couple of friends, and another couple more get excited about it because of your organized play, right? It's really sort of that, what do we call it, the uncle effect, the the single uncle effect or whatever it was, or
single
the
uncle
older
effect, yeah.
cousin, or
The weird uncle.
the weird uncle, yeah, whatever. You get these people sort of hooked, right? You know, it's your first one's free, come play this game, and now go out and
Yeah.
get other people to play
drugs.
it and put
Yeah.
more butts in seats. We
Right.
see those same people come back. I mean, Dave could probably speak to it even better, but we'll see those 5 people come back, except now they're 15 people.
Yeah.
Right. So the next time then they're 20 people, and that number just keeps growing every time because of that shared experience that leads to excitement.
Yeah. And I was always the guy when I was younger. I went to my first convention when I was 13 at Columbia University. It's this little crazy con called WizardCon, and I loved conventions, right? Because I got to meet a whole bunch of people who had the passion that I did about these games. And then I would drag my friends to the conventions, and they'd be all like, "Oh, really, dude?" And then they go and they'd be all like, "Holy crap, that was fun." And I'm like, yeah, exactly, right? You get to hang out with a whole bunch of like-minded people who are doing the same thing you're doing at home, but you can just meet more people, get more points of view, more experience, and everything else. So I think as we wind through this weird COVID cycle, the one good thing that has come out of it is people have become more accepting of online play, because they've had to.
Yeah.
And now they realize, okay, here's the good parts and the bad parts about online play. But if I can't go to Gen Con, at least I know there's going to be because my guess is every single convention now, that even if they have a in-person presence, is going to have an online presence
Absolutely.
as well. Just
Yeah.
because people, it's just an easy for folks that either can't travel or can't afford to travel or just can't make the timing right. It's a way that they get to participate and meet new people and learn new things and share new experiences, so they don't have to miss out anymore.
Let me throw a quick shout out to a con that's having to adapt here locally in New England. We have a con called InterCon. InterCon is actually a LARPing convention. It's like one of the biggest in the country, in the world. They are going fully remote, and this year, for the first time ever, they're actually doing tabletop gaming. And I know the con coordinator, she's done some amazing LARPs. I've got some armor and I dress up and I look silly and I pretend I'm a Stark in a Game of Thrones thing. It's great fun. So she reached out to me and she said, "Hey, we're going to do some tabletop stuff for the first time ever. It's all going to be remote. Would you mind running something?" So I said, "Sure. I've got this little Bandit Kingdoms tournament I whipped up for virtual Greyhawk Con." And she says, "I have no idea what those words were you just said, but please run it." So sign-ups for that go live tomorrow, and I'm going to go ahead and post the website in the audience. But I think they may still be looking for people to run games. I know they've got some heroes like Marvel hero games and maybe some other D&D games. So if anyone's looking for something to do, the convention is Jay. When's your charity event? Because this is
February 19th and 20th.
It's
is
the weekend
mega
after
stream.
that
Okay.
for this one. So go ahead and check them out. But keep in mind, there's other conventions all over the country and world where you may want to participate now. That before, I couldn't fly. I couldn't go to Gen Con. I couldn't go to Gary Con, but now we're all kind of lucky in that some of these cons are making things accessible to us that didn't used to be.
Yeah.
Dave, you're doing one once a month now, right?
If it's only once a month at this point, but yeah, we actually sometimes it's 2. I'm thinking sometime in the future it'll be 3, but yeah, right now we're running actually a virtual D&D weekend convention every month that we just kicked off last weekend. And it's the whole thing, right? It's come play D&D for the whole weekend. We're gonna do it every single month going forward.
Cool.
And
And that's
how many
on top
tables
of
last
like
weekend?
that's on top of, like Casey mentioned, all the other shows. Even when things go back to normal, they're all going to have a digital component, right?
Yeah.
Winter Fantasy, Origins, Gen Con, that's not going away.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunities out there, to roll dice and play games. And and what we're doing with the virtual D&D weekends is we're actually paying the DMs, right? DMs are actually getting paid to run games.
And I think you're going to see that. I remember during 4th edition, I made a pitch for that too, right? Because I think down the line, we're going to see more paid GMs. The whole idea of I'm going to run a game. Who wants to join? This is what the tickets are. right? And to a certain extent, like there was a point in time in the RPGA where my VP of organized play didn't want to fork out money for hotel rooms for GMs anymore, and he told me, he's like, they're just players, they'll show up. And I'm like, no, they won't, right? I'm like, yeah, a GM is a player, but like they've got a lot of responsibility. They've got a lot of work on their hands in order to make sure people around the table are having a good time. And I think that is we're going to see more and more of kind of professional GMism, especially the people who, really put in the work in order to do that. And they're going to be able to charge a reasonable amount of money, because in some ways it is a service, right? And it's a service because you can run a home game for your group of buddies and friends and everything else, and everybody, everybody's going to have a good time or whatever. But players who come in, they're going to demand sort of more and more from their experience from GMs, and some of them are not going to flinch at paying 5, 10, 15, 25, 35, who knows where to go.
Running a great game doesn't happen by accident.
No.
Right? It didn't happen in an accident with Living Greyhawk. It didn't happen with 4th edition or 1st edition, right? If you're running a great game, it's because you've put the work in, right?
Yeah.
You've prepared, you've honed your skills, you're able to, especially if you can do it in a public play space, which is, Living Greyhawk was the same thing, right? You're running for random people. Sometimes you knew them, right? You judged enough, you kind of know the people, right? But potentially you're judging for random people, and the skill set to do that isn't accidental, right? And recognizing that's important, right? Whether you recognize a great author by buying their product, right? Or a great company by them putting out good stuff. Same thing with a great DM, right? If you're sitting down with a DM and you're like, I'm going to sit down with this DM once a month or every 2 weeks, and I'm going to have 4 or 5 hours of the most fun I've had all month. Awesome. Recognize it and take care of it.
The other thing I think we're going to see is, I know there are a lot of portals to organize conventions out there, but a lot of them are not very intuitive, or need fundamental upgrades in how they're doing it, because they were mostly built for physical shows. But if somebody's not working on a kind of weird dating app version of find me a game this weekend, and can find a way to monetize that, then somebody's missing the boat on that.
Pretty cool.
Swipe right for D&D.
There are some Kickstarters that people are putting together. I saw one that was kind of a dating game, and you can chat and all that built in. So there are some things being done about it. So we'll see.
Yeah,
I'm surprised Warhorn doesn't have it.
Well, you got to remember that if you're doing that as a third party, isn't WotC going to go after you and say,
No, I don't think
there's
so.
no reason, because you make it system agnostic, right? You just say, I'm running D&D, I'm running
Okay.
Pathfinder, I'm running
Yeah.
this and that, right? It's gamers getting together, and so you get this menu. I'm looking for a game this week. I prefer to play Pathfinder. I'm looking for a time
Okay.
at this point of time. Who's got availability at their table, to make it a lot easier than just going on your on your Facebook, where your family and friends are seeing it too. I'm looking for a game. Who's got a spot, right?
Yep.
In order to do that, especially with how easy it is to do sort of microtransactions,
Yeah.
and everything else, right? And it's not like board game people can use it. If you're playing cribbage, I don't even,
yeah, that's
it's
true.
getting people together virtually to do the things you want to do, because you can't go to concerts, or you can't, or you're stuck at home. Maybe you're disabled, you can't travel, but God damn it, I want to have fun, right? A fun portal.
Interesting points, definitely. So I know we're over time, and I just want to say, is everyone okay as we'll start wrapping things up? I really appreciate you all coming on, and I know the time is flown by. We're already over 2 hours. Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy? How quick the discussion goes.
Yeah.
It's just
This
it's
isn't
insane.
all that different from us sitting around in a bar like we've been
Yeah,
doing.
and that's
Yeah,
the whole
that's
great
it.
thing about the way we
Yeah.
do talks.
I am
on
more
here.
sober.
So
We're
uh,
not super
this
tired
is-
because
this-
we've been running for 18 hours, but
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to my wife. She brought me pie and another adult
Ooh.
beverage.
Oh,
Oh.
Casey.
So, I
That's
mean,
You
I
awesome.
married
married
the
her
right
Gotta-
one. Yep.
Got to keep
for
her
a
there.
reason.
Why don't we go around the table and talk to our three guests, and they can sum up what about the discussion tonight and what they see for the future, and other happiness in the D&D world. Greg, why don't we start with you tonight?
Sum up what I see for the future.
Or like what what do you have planned to? What do you have
What do you
going
wanna
on?
plug?
Oh,
just
I have
wanna
planned.
a tie-in.
Well, obviously a lot of Adventures League. Doing a lot of stuff. We're coming up on our finale for Adventures League has a couple of different campaigns, and the one I am most in charge of is called the Masters campaign. It's for the most invested players. So the people who likely played Living Greyhawk, it's for them. It's the ones who can change the storyline. The storyline changes due to your effects. That's that sort of the one that's closest to a Greyhawker's heart. So we're about to finish our first season of that. That's a thing that I've got a lot going on for. I always have writing gigs. So many random writing gigs is I don't really know how to say no. I got a regular column over on Kobold Press about traps. I got cons everywhere, virtual and hopefully eventually real. Is that what you're looking for? I guess I'm not sure.
Did you hear?
Yeah.
Did you say Cobalt Press? That's pretty ironic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do a lot of stuff for Kobold Press.
Well, we're
It's
gonna
awesome.
we're
Yep,
gonna
great
have
team.
Wolfgang on Sunday.
Oh, awesome.
Wolfgang's
Yep.
such a fun
He
guy.
is great.
Oh, look at that! It's up right now. Wolfgang Bauer on Gabbin this Sunday.
Yep.
So we'll talk
Oh,
about that in
yeah.
a second.
Nice.
Yeah. So, well, thank you, Greg, for coming on. Really
Sure.
appreciate.
Anytime.
Appreciate it again. Casey, Casey's gonna talk about the master plan for 2021 for Living Greyhawk during his part. I want you to,
I am?
because Eric's on, and you have Steven and David and Greg. Why not? Absolutely, Steven. Thank you for coming on. What would you like to say in closing?
Just it was fun to go back in the Wayback Machine and relive past traumas of Living Greyhawk and past past triumphs and everything else. I'm a freelance game designer who fights with mobile game companies in China who keep on trying to get me to move to Beijing, and I keep on saying no.
Wow.
Good choice.
Yeah, like maybe 3 years ago, but I think Beth would have some serious issues if I was like, baby, I'm going to China. And she'd be all like, you could go.
You're gonna be
fuck
lonely.
yourself. I'm working on sort of my take on D20 games, mostly fantasy games called Delve RPG. So working on that, I work for various companies on various projects. I'm writing a 5th edition little mini adventure right now for one of my clients. And yeah, I just make game stuff. I think about games. And I just keep on doing that. It's a whole lot of fun. I'm very grateful for being able to be in this industry for 20 years and continue to be able to do it. It's a hell of a lot of fun.
Beth just linked to Steven's company in chat. Please check it out.
It's more, yeah. It's.
Please do.
I have a blog and a Patreon, so.
Fantastic. Yeah, please
Awesome.
check those
Yeah.
out. Absolutely. Oh, you have
Also,
right here on the front page, The Secret of Bone Hill.
yeah. So one of the
Wow.
things that I've been doing on my blog is lately is I've been going back and reminiscing
Oh,
about
cool.
Nice.
about
Leonard.
adventures. So I did because of Len passing, I did Secret of Bone Hill, which was a big thing in my youth. I did what is it, Dragons of Despair the weekend before, and then The Lost City. As I sort of kind of take a look back and remember, put down my thoughts on various adventures. My next one is going to be about the Greyhawk box set and why I think that thing is brilliant, and you probably couldn't produce anything like it again.
Beautiful.
Did you come on one of Jay's Sunday shows where he goes hardcore with Anna into the Greyhawk lore to talk about that?
Campaign
yeah, that'd be
lore.
I'd have to study for that.
Yeah.
And then so usually, although election night, which Dave witnessed this because we were chatting on election night, is I had a tumble which sprained my ankle and bruised some ribs, and I was in bed for nearly a week, and I'm finally feeling a lot better. So it slowed me down a bit. So also on the blog, I talk about what I'm doing in Delve and putting up some sneak peeks. My patrons over on my Patreon get more things. I'll do a Monster Monday, and then I've been releasing sections of chapters that I've gotten done with the game, and I'm hoping to get it to a point where people can actually make their own characters, and I'm going to run some campaigns, and I've got a YouTube channel where I've got some I'm going to put up some playtest games and basically stream that as it goes, so people can see me run the game. And then when I fall into things, it's like, well, that's got to change. Right? Screwed that up. Like, thanks, playtesters. So yeah.
I just had the light bulb go off in my head about something.
Yeah, and that's about it.
Very, very cool. And Beth, thank you for linking his Patreon and Steven's company in chat.
Oh.
Thanks, baby.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got you.
David, how about you? What's going on?
So, right. So I am, I've gone from Dave, the living Greyhawk circle guy, Valuna guy, to most people now know me as the Bald Man, right? I own and run Bald Man Games, which we publish content, but our main thing is we run shows. We own shows, Winter Fantasy, Origins, Gen Con, PAX Online, D&D Live, D&D Celebration, virtual D&D weekends. Right, if you're at a big show playing D&D, we probably have something to do with it in some fashion. This year, if we keep it up, I think we will either this year or early next year, we will actually pass 200,000 people that we've actually run through a game of Dungeons and Dragons, since we started.
I'm only like a quarter of those.
What that? Yeah,
I'm only like a quarter of those.
Oh, I'm sure you have.
Like of the games you've run.
But at the end of the day, everything I have with Bald Man Games, everything with Living Greyhawk, right? It all started with Greyhawk, right? It started with Grey Talk, right? And hanging out in those meetings, and all the people that I consider, friends and work with now, Greg, Steven, Jason, people hiding in the chat like Eric and Teos, right? All of those started with clicking that button and sending an email and saying, yeah, sure, I'll be part of this crazy experiment called Living Greyhawk, right? And as many of us did, that's how we got to the point where having this conversation and that somebody actually gives a rat's ass about what's coming out of my mouth, right? All started with that random email of Living Greyhawk, right? And I wouldn't trade Living Greyhawk for the world. At the same time, I'd never want to do it again. Because I'm old enough and wise enough now to know that it would kill me. But there's no regrets.
Well, all three of you, thank you so very much for hopping on tonight. And so I'm going to put this out there because I do this every time and every show. When we had Virtual Greyhawk Con, the number one viewed watch show ever was I had Eric Mona playing this crazy Specialty Priest of Ralashaz Venarium board.
Yeah.
What an unbelievable role-playing game, Eric, that was. And Luke Gygax was playing it. Steven Schnell for Troller Games. Anna. Mike played in it. Mike took Gary Julian's place. It was wonderful. And Chuck Cumbo. So if you're interested, Eric, we've got to continue that story with this character. And Eric said he would. Maybe if you'd like to join, any of you would like to join in,
I will put a blast.
I will put it out there for that game. So, okay. We're thinking about doing something over the holidays.
We got to keep working on Jay's primer or primer, however you want to pronounce
Primer.
it. Because he says he runs 1E, 2E. Now he runs 1.J.
1.J.
Yeah. 40 years of house rules. And he just
J
expects people to know.
Yeah.
Because him and his table are so used to it. Like the first time I played with him, I tried to move more than 10 feet and do a thing. And he's like, well, you can't do that. That's the rule of 10 feet.
Right.
And I'm like, I played AD&D as a kid. What the hell are you talking about?
Because we use miniatures. I'm just going to show.
Yeah,
I have the entire, or it's called Orlane, but I have the entire village of Orlane up on my table right now. For example, here's just a small picture of it. There you go. That's
very cool.
So with the sponsors and all, and we're running against the Cult of the Reptile God right now, which I never ran after all these years, and so we're having some fun with it. And but that's our style. Our style is 1E, 2E with some third edition feats melded into a system and miniature tabletop style, and everyone had fun. So we'll contact we'll contact you both, and Greg, and if you want to. Maybe we'll get something going, game here over the holidays. Because there's not going to be anything worse than sitting at home over Christmas with nowhere to go.
Back in the old LG days, the circle plus me, I don't know why it was always plus me, always used to have a game. We used to regularly get together, probably because half the circle came from the upper Midwest, but
Right.
we used to always, like a Winter Fantasy, we'd have a game that would start at like midnight, and Tulak or Dave or somebody would run, and we'd all sit around in a hotel room and play together, our once or twice a year game.
So many stories.
Yeah.
It's a good way to keep friends together. It's a good way to get some bonding and get some it's a fun time. So we will definitely I'll be in touch with everyone through Casey, of course, who is the grand facilitator of everything here.
I tell him I demand a producing credit, and then
You
my
do.
wife
You
is
go.
like,
You
"Are
earned
you
it."
giving this guy money? Are you paying for his Twitch stream?" I'm like, "Not that kind of producer, man."
Yeah. But Casey has a wonderful has 2 characters in my campaign now, so and Anna's got a couple as well, and
Yep.
so we're all having fun, just keeping it going. So Mike, what do you got going on, man?
Oh, you know me, I don't have anything going on. But no, keep reading Greyhawkery. I'm still doing the Ring of 5 questions, so if you want to
Yeah.
send me an
good
email,
Yes.
pick
Yeah,
out my
everyone
questions.
should participate.
might
That thing
have
is
a-
great fun.
There you go.
I
Right.
love
And,
reading the
and
responses.
someone today linked, and I thought it was new, and I went berserk for about 10 seconds until I realized it was 2011. Crichton Broadhurst's Ring of Questions from
Yeah,
2011. I was like, oh my gosh, how'd you
Yeah,
get him?
they used to be interviews in disguise, and I would try to get people to respond. It was a lot harder back then.
Yeah,
Imagine that.
but wow, that was like 9 years ago. So, well, Mike, thanks again. Anna, what's going on tonight?
Oh, there's a lot of things. First I can mention, since we will have Wolfgang on Sunday, so I will see if I can try make him happy before then, doing a whole bunch of stuff for Cobalt Press, wrapping up stuff. I'm not sure I will have it done by Sunday, but we'll see. So I have to work a lot to keep him happy these days, because they've just announced the New Southlands 5e Kickstarter coming up, and I'm lead cartographer on that project.
Nice.
And
Oh,
Greg
cool.
is so there is a lot of things that I need to get done for that one. So that's been kind of kept me busy for a long time.
I did some
And-
work on the original.
Yeah, I remember. Yep. Yep. So that is now getting a real good facelift, and so that is one thing. But also the other big thing is that I'm preparing and gearing up for running my own campaign now, so I make a bunch of players happy. So it's set in the southern Shieldlands in 598, something like that. So IUs have occupied most of it. So it's kind of that gray borderland area between Shieldlands, IUs, and God knows what, so to speak. So it's going to be, going to be the best well-mapped campaign ever. So it's a test case for my new generation of Greyhawk maps. So I kept my 3D computer running basically 2 weeks in a row, 24/7, just rendering areas. So I have some hundreds of square miles rendered. It's not done in Photoshop and touched up yet, but it's starting to be rendered, and it looks awesome. And it's really shaping up to looking good. And it's overland maps with 5 feet per pixel resolution. So I'm going to run this as a dungeon crawl, but overland dungeon crawl, so to speak. So every nook and cranny of the southern Shieldlands, the coast, from Critwall to Export and a bit onwards, and then about 100 miles inland is going to be mapped 5 feet per pixel resolution. So we can expect a lot of running around the countryside, hiding, chasing after, and being chased, and do a lot of stuff. So that is gearing up. But the good thing is all this material for the campaign, all the maps and all that, will come to my patrons and to everybody too. So I'm not going to sit and hold back on this. This is a test case for a new generation of Greyhawk maps, and also a test case for new generation of other maps that we'll do for other clients and stuff for commissions too. So it's coming. So that is gearing up, and it's looking really, really promising. There was some parts of it that I wasn't that keen on, so I had to redo the first bits that I did few months ago because they were not up to snuff. But now I think they are good enough, and they will hold up for future scrutiny, so to speak. So that's the big thing. So it's coming to, yeah, they will be unwrapped to my players the upcoming month or so, and then he will present it in December. But the first thing that will come of this is that I will present, hopefully I have it written by next week, an article about how these maps are actually done, so to speak. So the tech bits before I actually show the end results, because I will not have the end results ready yet, but I have a lot of screenshots on how it's done. So there will be some blog posts and stuff on how this is made, how the technology works, and all the considerations and all the weird technical stuff that goes into making maps that are supposed to be used in geographical information system, game engines, PDFs, online maps, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's coming.
Unbelievable stuff, Anna. And Anna's in the preparation stages with me for this, for Gary Con coming up.
Yes, there will be a huge
yeah.
seminar where there will be a proper unveiling
Yeah.
of new generation Greyhawk maps. So Lendor Isles is coming up this spring. It will be the new big thing. Ratik is in the plans for the summer fall. To be, because those were the two that my patrons and the members of the Flanies Geographical Society group that have been voting on. They wanted those two to go first. So, and also thank you everyone who signed up and helping me do this. It's just amazing. So it's just awesome. So I'm just in awe of everyone who can contribute and helping me do this. It's just fantastic. So yeah. So I'm just trying to do as much and as good as I can get away with, so to speak, and do it and present it and make sure that there will be all the maps will be available for anyone to kind of make their own version of it. That's the big goal with this generation of apps, is that they should be fully customizable without using too many difficult software and stuff. So you can make your own version of it, put the villages where you want to and the roads where you want to, etc.
Very, very cool. All right, so Casey, what do you got going on, and what's your grand 2021 plan for Living Greyhawk meetings?
So, well, I'll start small. I'm currently running 2 campaigns. I'm doing Ghosts of Saltmarsh still. They just finished up a murder investigation in the town of Seaton, where I had Lord Obme show up and kick their ass all over the place.
Yep.
I don't want my wife to hear this. You know, she'll get mad at me, but he got away. And they're about to adventure in the Dreadwood. So that's coming up in a couple Saturdays. They're all level 6. And then we'll get back to the actual Ghost of Saltmarsh, going and dealing with the Sahagin U3 adventure. And then in my other campaign, we are doing every other Monday, we're doing Stormlord's Wrath, which is the 5e sequel to Dragon of Ice Spire Peak, which Sean Merwin was the author of.
Nice.
So we're having a lot of fun doing that. That's set in the Forgotten Realms. I didn't port it to Greyhawk. I was just looking for something real easy to run on Roll20, and we've been having a lot of fun with that one as well. And then coming up on Legends of Lore next month, date to be determined, either December 2nd or December 9th. I'm currently efforting the Duchy of Ernst triads. We've got Denise Malden, who's agreed, Russ Taylor, Mike Hackstad, I think, who may have been in the audience earlier tonight, and various other people. I reached out to a ton of them, so we're just still trying to lock in who's available on the 2nd or the 9th and do a Duchy show. And when we do that, that's going to put us at something like 16 regions or 17 regions that have been on the show this year, represented by someone who is a triad or circle member from that particular region. So in just the 1 year we've really been doing this hardcore with Jay, Anna, and Mike, we've covered half the campaign, and we've barely even scratched the surface of these regional stories, because we start diving into how we got, all got involved, and we all have these amazing stories to tell. So we're going to keep that momentum going. What I'm really hoping is that people can reach out to, oh, I knew the Bissell triad. Hey, put them in touch with me. I need Bissell, Grand March, a Principality of Ulick, Yeomanry, and then it gets tougher. Ekbeer, I don't speak French. Do anyone out there have an Ekbeer contact?
Not
Ken.
in 15 years. I have their name.
And then Pale. We haven't gotten anyone from the Pale.
Yeah.
On, and then it gets really tough. Alyssa, I speak a very bad German, so we're gonna need.
Oh, but we
someone
have
to reach out to them.
contacts with Alyssa. We have Frank. I forgot his last name.
Well, with the time difference, it's very tough.
Yeah,
But
We
let's
can
get
work
these
out some
triad
things.
members
Yeah.
because I've created a Discord group specifically for former Living Greyhawk triads and circle members and RPGA coordinators, and I call it Living Greyhawk survivors. And I would really love for these people to reach out to me. I'll send you the invite. It's low traffic. We're not trying to use it for anything other than just keeping in touch with each other so that like, hey, we met 15 years ago and we lost touch, or I'm looking to do a show for the I use border states. Who can I reach out to that can be on that show? So hopefully everyone will join us on that Discord group. And then for 2021, I've already pointed people towards what's called ExtraCon, the spinoff from Intercon. So please go take a look at that. But for the Legends and Lore Living Greyhawk shows, what I'd really like to do is have a show where we got those of you who graduated from Living Greyhawk, so to speak, and went on to be in the industry, either as freelancers or full-time jobs, and talk to us about what life is like in the industry. Because I think a lot of people like myself, I'm a DM, I wrote my book, $9.95 on Amazon. I had to get it in.
Mikey's got two.
Mike, that's $10 for Mike. I'm going to start calling him Dollar Bill Mike. But, I think a lot of us out there are very envious. And we know it's a lot of hard work. And we want to hear the hard work stories. And we want to hear the passion stories about, did you get in there? Can it be a full-time job? Because as you said, Dave, D&D is blowing up. And you need content. And you need dungeon masters. And you've got people striking out on their own to do their own gaming companies. So everyone go take a look at Steven's website and his Patreon. And I think we all just have a great curiosity to hear what made the Living Greyhawk crucible, so to speak, output so much talented admins, authors, etc. So hopefully in 2021 we can do a show where we can get Ron Lundeen and Sean Merwin and everyone else on together, because it's obvious that you guys not only know each other no matter what company you guys ended up at, but you still remained in contact.
And friends,
it's a small industry, right? Yeah. We get that impression that you guys all remain friends. So that's really amazing. And I hope you guys would share some of those stories with us. And then as a final kind of 2021, what I would like to start doing with the show is having meta regional, where we get a circle member and then one triad member from each of their regions on.
Or two or whatever, yeah.
No, I think it'll work best because that'll give you like 6 guests, 5, 6, 7 guests.
Yeah.
And then you can talk about the meta regional plot arcs. It could be like High Folk was doing this for reasons A, B, C, and D. Well, over here in the BK, we were doing this. I have no idea what Greg was doing other than the one time I got to go up to Wisconsin and play in their adventures.
Because I had Britt take over the core storyline for us.
Well, right. Well, right. I got to hear the Brit core stuff, but the audience didn't get to live with Brit and hear about why I did or did not become a more powerful
you need
god.
to.
It's a good.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
So,
in Casey, you need to write one of these books for every region, and then have a big volume for the whole campaign.
The new,
Okay, someone set that Kickstarter Patreon up and hire me away from my boring
you should
insurance
do
job.
that. Yep.
Eric Mona thinks it's a wonderful idea. What an interesting archive of social history all those shows could be. There you go. So I agree 100%. And, every single Legends and Lore Living Greyhawk is archived. I'm gonna toot my own horn here. Right there on the YouTube one, every single show is in Legends and Lore. All right, they're all listed under Legends and Lore sub. You can go watch every single living Greyhawk that we've ever done, plus every Legends and Lore, every Gabbin, every stream I've ever done, because Twitch only keeps them for 60 days, so they're all on YouTube.
And if you're like, I'm really interested in this one particular region or this one particular guest, Conrad helped me out.
Yeah.
And so he gave me the links for like episode 35. I have the YouTube direct linked. I can share with some episode 48, which was Zeef.
Yep.
I can just share that so you don't have to hunt around. So
Yeah.
find me on the Discords.
So
Since we're pimping books, since he pimped his book.
Yeah.
yes, please
My,
do.
Ooh.
Please do.
A month ago, Knuckleheads and Other Such Curiosities, an expansion for Icewind Dale, the current season.
Oh, wow.
Me and some of the other admins wrote this hardcover that came out.
Beautiful.
So it is very pretty. I'm very pleased with like how it printed and everything. It's a full color, full art.
Is that available? Where's that available?
You can get it print on demand on the dmsguild.com.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Wonderful. All right, I'll get through mine as quickly as possible because I know we've heard enough chatting tonight, and we've kept you all long enough. Tomorrow night against the Cult of the Reptile God, third session. The group is in the Temple of Marika. I call it Lorraine because I relocated it to the Wild Coast near Narwhal, and they're one of their own. The barbarian cleric Zafnath was taken because he went out on his own, and they're trying to locate him, and that's where we are in that. Gamescape 3D sponsored giveaway drawing tomorrow night for some great STL files for print. Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern. I cannot wait. The Barrier Geeks, the Geoff group, with Casey and Anna in. Rob Kinnerman's the only one who will not be on that list. Cannot make it, but everyone else will be there. We've asked Vernon Vincent if he can join in and hop in and join the group as well. So we'll see. It's going to be a dumb
Every
adventure.
group
Right?
needs a dumb paladin.
Yeah, it's a dumb paladin. I guarantee you a something that you've never seen in Greyhawk before. It's kind of going to be silly and stupid, but difficult, but fun. So there you go. I need a mental break, right, Anna? So
Yeah.
it's gonna be a fun one. Definitely got a lot of content coming up here. Sunday night, Wolfgang Bauer's on. I can't wait for this discussion. Wolfgang is another guest we're looking forward to speaking with. That's Sunday. No game on Thanksgiving, obviously, so we've moved it to Tuesday. Now, when Sean Reynolds and our friend Bruce Cordell were on a couple weeks ago, everyone wanted this RPGA addendum that was for slavers called Crossbows and Crossbones. And he said, I neither will confirm nor deny that I have it, and neither confirm nor deny I gave it to you. I will neither confirm nor deny that I have it now, but I will confirm that I'm running it as a one-shot on Tuesday night. Okay, so there you go. Well, we're going to actually run that and live stream it Tuesday instead of, take a little break from N1, and that's what we'll do. So have the ships, have the water, have the Harby all ready to go. So there you go. So we'll run Sean Reynolds Crossbows and Crossbones next week. What are you thankful for in Greyhawk, and holidays of Greyhawk will be our topic on Legends and Lore next Wednesday. All right, so that'll be let's all just sit back, and I want participation from the audience. We're going to give some thanks to what we're doing, and that'll be what we'll have, and we'll talk about some Brewfest and all the other holidays that are going on, and maybe we can convince Gary to hop on, because Gary kind of got a little confused about what the topic was the last Gabbin. So, but that's okay. I'm sorry, Gary. I had to bust your stones. All right, big things coming up. Big things. The 24+ hour Greyhawk Mega Stream fundraiser titled Underdark Uprising, February 19th and 20th. You just can't do it in one day. We have 8 Twitch channels now participating, maybe more. There's everyone's logo. We raised over $2,500 for St. Jude. We're going to shoot for the stars here, $4,000 plus easily this time with all these channels. It should be a no-brainer. And we're going to have all different sorts of stories about the Underdark for all these streaming channels that are all wonderful people, and they're great. And then I said this on Monday if you weren't on, Luke Gygax asked me to replicate, because he had so much fun, and he said it was a no-brainer, replicate Greyhawk Con, Virtual Greyhawk Con, inside of Gary Con, for virtual coming up that weekend. So we're going to have our own little mini con within I can't wait. Casey's going to rerun his Bandit Kingdom tournament for new people, and we got all these events. I have a Grand Joust as the main event that Saturday night for us, and I'm hoping to have about 12 other Twitch channels involved. So we're going to have, they want 24 coverage on streaming over the 4 days. If we can get there, we will try. But and plus, we're going to have Greyhawk Reborn involved and all these other DMs. Gitano, Grenwolf already said he's going to DM. I can't wait. So just note that we're in the planning stages of this. As details come out, I will tell everyone and let you know what's going on so that when you could sign up or when you can put in something as a DM. And if you are interested, you whisper me, you know where to get a hold of me. Please, I could use the assistance here for this. This is a Herculean undertaking, but I'm up for it. So, all right. Thank you all. What a wonderful show. This was fun. I had fun tonight. Hope you all had fun. Stephen, Greg, David, please come back.
guys.
Please, hopefully we can get playing a nice, fun game, old school style. Casey,
Eric steals the lesser artifact at the last.
Oh, that was so good.
If you want to watch one of and Anna and I agree, the best role RP'd ever on my channel.
Yeah.
Ever.
Oh yeah, it was so good.
Was Eric's Venarium Void, especially piece of Relish Jazz. It was hysterical, and at the end, the Chaotic Neutral did a crazy thing, and it was wonderful. It's on YouTube under Virtual Greyhawk Con, All-Star event. So let's raid into Praetors Rejects, Jimmy Duffy's channel, because Jimmy is helping me out with Gary Con, great guy. We'll see. Oh, we got some nice ending fluff here. See you all soon.
Bye.
All right, setting up the raid here. Yes, thank you all. What a wonderful show.
And we'll talk.
We can always talk. I got this a little high. Let me turn this down.
I've got to go take care of something. I'll see
Stephen,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Raid setting up.
Great seeing you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you all. Wonderful evening. I really appreciate it. Doug Dalton, bummed you missed it. You can watch it right on Twitch here. I'll have it up on YouTube tomorrow morning. Please give us a follow if you can. We'd really appreciate it. 61 people raiding into Praetors. Here we go. 5 seconds.
Night, everybody.
Night.
Raid going in.
Oh, we lost Dave.
It's okay. Yeah, they gotta go. I mean, we held them long. We did.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
That was
45.
yeah, that went a long time.
It was one because everyone's having so much fun,
Yeah, it was so many good stories. So,
Yeah, we had a good show earlier, Greg.
Oh yeah.
The three of y'all together.
Oh. You could easily choose a con or a theme, and you could probably spend 2-3 hours just on stories alone of that one. All right, well, I'm gonna head out, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Bye,
Greg.
Greg.
Wonderful seeing you again.
Greg, thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Any
I actually talked to him. He was potentially up for this. Like, he had this night free, but he had to clear it with his wife. Their biggest issue is they're both they have a very young child,
right?
And they both are working from home, and so they have certain times where he's supposed to be in charge of childcare and she's working, and he's often child caring at night.
Tell him, pick a Wednesday. In 2021, we'll reach out to Jason, another high folk guy.